red button again. Oh, going live, it says. Okay, now it says live. Now I need to turn the camera on though for it to stay live, I believe. Okay. Okay, camera is on and we're on live. Can you check? Okay. Not yet, no. Yeah.
check, check.
Maybe the two of you can do the.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
We will have the people presenting over here when you're presenting.
Beth, if you just begin with that.
Oh, sure. Hello?
And the mayor's is
Yep.
the only one I haven't checked.
Can you hear me now?
That didn't pick up for some reason.
Hang on. I just got to get this thing plugged in here.
You know, I'm gonna plug it into a different port here, because I had that before.
Yeah, you did. It was a couple of nights ago, I think.
Yeah.
But, so I will say. Not to be nitpicky, but that example of the room change is an example of a lack of attention to detail.
And that's,
I mean, it's minor. It really is minor, but you know, like, it's just,
yeah, because now we're talking serious dollars.
right.
It's done.
I don't know.
Here?
The computer, she means.
Check.
Oh, I don't know. I stepped out.
Oh, who's the computer?
Check, check.
So, Chapin, we need to talk.
Okay.
Alright. That's late. That's right. Let's convene the budget hearing at 5:07. First item on the agenda is the agenda. Is there a motion?
Move to adopt the agenda. Second.
Move to adopt the agenda by Councilor Roof, second by Councilor Tracy. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? We have the agenda. Item number 2 is public forum. Anyone that wishes to speak in the public forum?
I do.
Gail, come on up.
Thank you, Kurt.
Good to see you.
Nice to see all of you. I am Gail Morrow. I am a board member at the Heineberg Senior Community Center, and I want to say that Beth Hammond, who is our executive director, wishes that she was here, but she had a concert for her daughter, a spring concert at Essex Schools. But I do have a few words that she would like to convey to you tonight. Because of past support from the City of Burlington and the United Way, the Heineberg Community Senior Center has created many opportunities for older adults to experience a quality of life. Our gratitude to the city is great. With a sudden and unexpected loss of United Way meal and nutrition funding, we are looking for opportunities that will not only ensure our future success, but support a wide variety of center programs while increasing reach throughout Burlington's aging population. Years ago, the United Way grant was originally awarded to us for our congregate meals. However, we are now experiencing a great need for our many other programs and services. In just 1 year, all existing programs, without exception, have seen a 75 to 100% increase in attendance. We have made changes to our nutrition program, including ways to accommodate the younger older adult participants who requested gluten-free or vegan entrees, all the while offering the traditional menu favored by our 80 and 90-year-olds. This past year, our center has responded to changing interests and needs by adding 10 additional programs and activities to our monthly calendar. In total, Heineberg Senior Community Center offers programs to over 500 participants with an average of 300 unduplicated people in a weekly attendance. 26 programs and services within the following areas: physical health, mental well-being, cultural and education, meals, nutrition, creative arts, and recreation. This year, we will investigate the following to bring about financial stability. We will investigate a merger with another organization, such as the Champlain Senior Center, Burlington Parks Recreation Waterfront, to develop our already valuable partnerships in order to consolidate operation efforts, reduce cost, and significantly increase what we are able to offer both participants and our aging community members. Our space in the new North End could also support the Miller Center programs as needed. Our centers have been connected in the past, and which allowed directors to focus on programming and participants. We will look into increasing our monthly rentals. We have recently remodeled both our upper and lower levels thanks to CEDO. Our building is a welcoming and accessible place for a variety of activities. Currently, we have 4 ongoing rentals: Jazzercise, Vermont Dance Tribe, North Shore Community Group, and Burlington Songwriters Group. These rentals total $13,000 annually in addition to our one-time rentals. We will increase fundraisers that bring the community together to raise awareness and essential funds. Examples of efforts already underway include our Walk of Ages fundraiser, Holiday Bazaar, Annual Appeal, and a Lake Monsters baseball game. This year, we're also introducing an international evening celebration with a variety of cultures in our community. To ensure fundraising success, we have developed fundraising committees for each individual fundraiser. Ongoing fundraising efforts include online donations and a planned giving bequest program. We will investigate and continue to advocate for city funding to help with our payroll. We have 2 part-time staff people, an executive director, and a center coordinator. Our payroll for this small staff is $60,000 before Medicare and Social Security. Our ask from the city in this transition year of no United Way funding is $64,000, which reflects a $24,000 difference from last year's city allocation. It is imperative that we move forward to meet the changing demographics that we are seeing and not go backwards. In recent months, several community partners have noted how nice it is to see us thriving, and we agree and are quite proud. We would hate to lose momentum or allow lack of funding to be the reason we can no longer effectively respond to our aging population's needs. As I leave, I want to leave you with this one statistic because it kind of caught me off guard when I heard about it this winter. This is according to AARP data. Loneliness has the same negative health impact as one person smoking 17 cigarettes a day. Every day at the center, that's what we do. We combat loneliness. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Gail.
Thank you, Kurt.
All right. Anyone else in the public forum? Hearing none, we'll close out item 2, public forum, and move to item 3, report from Burlington Telecom. There? Yeah. Good with that? Yeah.
Please.
Yes, please.
Who's going to
I can help you with this. I'll do whatever you want.
How you doing? Good to see you.
Thank you. Good, thank you. All right, so Rich is just going to open on tab 1.
Yes.
Content. Yeah, that's good. So tab 1, although it's FY19 budget presentation, I always start with FY18 to give you some context. I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time going through lots of detailed figures here. As you all know, BT had a few distractions this year, and that was, if you like, impacted a lot of us. Having said all of that, BT, the business, continues to perform well. It continues an unbroken run of growth, an improvement in financial results. It's about 8 years long now. And although we didn't hit our revenue target for the year, which was $10 million, we did hit $9.7 million. And the $10 million bucks included a $200,000, if you like, task because we just didn't know. We felt when we ended last year, we added 750 net new subscribers. We thought there was a chance we might get to 1,000 this year. We put it in as a task because we weren't sure. We didn't make it. Having said that, you know, we actually built in a lot more costs so that there was no additional profit in our budget from that task. So overall for the year, financial result-wise, it's gone pretty much as we expected. We budgeted after all of our costs. You scroll down, Rich. EBITDA of $4,045,000. We're actually going to come in just over $4 million, so slightly below budget, but nevertheless up from $3.5 million, just under $3.6 million in fiscal 17. We always look at the business in terms of cash flow and debt service. We'll have invested another we budgeted to invest $2.5 million in CapEx in the community, largely in building out the BT network. We'll come in just under that, but nevertheless, our build-out plans have continued unabated. And from a pure cash flow perspective, even after debt service and the investment of that $2.5 million, we're actually forecasting just about $500,000 versus just over $500,000. We'll come in higher than that because I do expect our CapEx will come in $100,000 or $150,000 lower for the year. So all in all, solid performance, even though we've had some distractions. Surprisingly, our subscriber counts for the first 9 months of this year are roughly in line with last year. We had a record first quarter to the fiscal year. Our subscriber counts have increased continued to increase since the first quarter, but at a lower level than last year. But we're still on track. You know, we have a peak period in June, July, August, and September. That's when we do 2/3 of our subscriber growth in a year. We're still on track to get to around 700 to 750 net new subscribers again this year. That's 18. Any questions on 18?
Any questions on 18?
Okay. For 19, the key deliverables for 19 is, again, one of the drivers of BT for years now and will continue to be, is continuing to differentiate ourselves through customer service, through going the extra mile. We do it every day, and it brings us increasing results every month as we continue to build on that. You know, 5 years ago, it wasn't part of the culture of BT. We talked about it and we kind of practiced it, but we didn't really believe it. Now I think it's part of the value system and belief of BT. It's part of our DNA, which is great. And I don't see that changing at all going forward. Our focus this year and our focus for next year continues to be the completion of the build-out of the City of Burlington out of BT's cash flow. We thought when we put the budget together that we'd be there by Thanksgiving this year, barring unanticipated construction problems. There are always a few areas that say thank you, but no thank you. Looks like we've had a big breakthrough in one area of about 300 homes that had previously said thank you, but no thank you. But now, thanks to help from Brian and others, looks like they're going to say thank you, please do. That'll take us into the spring of 19. But apart from that, we will be done with the build out of BT's network in Burlington, apart from 120 premises that are economically unviable for us at the moment. We'll be done by Thanksgiving this year. We'll be there. So I think that's a big deal to all of us at BT. We continue to grow market share. Our budget for next year anticipates another 750 net subscriber count adds. I think that's entirely achievable. We could do more. I don't think that's too much of a stretch. Annual revenues increased 10.5 million. We'll actually pass the 10 million mark for the first time. EBITDA is going up 10% from 4 million to 4.4 million. Capital expenditures are due to rise significantly. Excluding capitalized install labor, there'll be about 2 million this year. Next year, we've got them at 2.9 million, so that's a 45-50% increase. A couple of reasons for that. One, we've got a number of projects like Great Streets and Southern Connector that we've budgeted. We also have some aging infrastructure, and specifically by aging infrastructure, I mean the satellite dish, where the way satellites broadcast to us is changing, and ours will reach the end of its life. We put it in for next year because we don't control how content providers broadcast to us. I think we're probably 2 or 3 years out. And we've got a number of interesting initiatives for next year, which we're uncertain whether they'll pop next year or not, but we want to make sure that if they do, we're able to cover them. We're doing meaningful studies on a couple of communities outside of the borders of Burlington at the moment. And we're doing some really exciting, or having some really exciting conversations on the idea of, with property developers, of gig symmetrical bandwidth, 1,000 megabits symmetrical as part of the base rent of rental properties as an essential utility like electricity and water. We launched the first 2 of those this year, one in Winooski. The other one was the first phase of the redevelopment of Burlington College with Eric Farrell, and both have proved to be a great success for the developers. Both have proved to be a real draw for attracting tenants there. And we have some fairly exciting discussions going on at the moment, which are too premature for announcement and certainly not to our competitors at this point in time, but which could result in a program of several hundred more units actually being converted going forward, as well as new properties, all to gig symmetrical bandwidth. If that happens, that'll be a game changer in this market. So a lot of things to look forward to next year. In terms of the actual figures, Rich, as I said, have been through most of them. Revenues going from 9.7 to 10.5. Unfortunately, our cost of goods continues to increase. We had a crazy increase this year, driven by price increases from content providers that we have really no leverage on. Even next year, there's a 6.7% increase coming from them, from existing contracts that we have no control over being able to modify or minimize. Our gross margin on video product is little or nothing, so we have nowhere to go on that. From a cost perspective, we're fairly stable apart from customer service. We opened a new shop front in the New North End this year as part of a major long-term drive to build customer service and reputation in that part of the city, associated with the build-out of BT's network there. We've got the full year impact of that additional staffing cost in next year. Although customer counts into that storefront are low at the moment, it's just an amazing experience. We're able to give people a level of customer service that nobody has any interest in doing, and I think that'll augur well for both the customers and for BT over the long term, and also act as a model for BT as it moves beyond Burlington's borders and opens more customer service centres in new communities that it enters. So operating EBITDA, which is a measure of profitability, up from 4 million to 4.4 million next year. One new FTE included in that, a new hire in Q3 next year. I can't tell you where it'll be. We never budget for specific positions. We look at where we get particular pressure points and retain the flexibility to mitigate a pressure point. So just one new FTE in there. Already been through CapEx, up significantly over this year, and similar level of cash flow. In fact, cash flow post debt service is going to be actually, can you scroll back up a bit?
Certainly can.
Sorry, it's a bit further. Keep going. Bit further. Okay. So cash flow post debt service a little lower, primarily because of the meaningful increase in capital expenditure year over year. That's it for BT's FY19 budget. The major increases in operating costs are really limited to the extra person. Our assumptions on healthcare cost increases, pensions, COLA, that really drives those costs. Nothing else in there.
All right, great. Thank you for that presentation. Questions for Councilor Butcher?
I just have one question.
Yes.
So with new development that occurs in Burlington, some of them have been of size, like
Yes.
in my ward, Bayberry Common.
Yes.
Is that how does BT deal with that? I mean, are you proactive working with the developer, or?
We always try to be extremely proactive. So Bayberry is SD Island. We worked really hard to try and convince them to make that a gig symmetrical development. They chose not to at that point in time. As you saw, we worked really hard on Burlington College and they decided to make it.
Right.
We continue to work really hard on City Place. Every new building in Burlington, and some beyond Burlington's borders, we are now in active and proactive dialogue with the developers to actually have us in there as an essential service. And if they choose not to, we'll still try and wire, well, not try, we will wire every single new building in Burlington that a developer will allow us to do for the BT service, whether they go 100% or not.
Have you been able to do that in Bayberry Common? Have they allowed you to at least notify people?
They have. They have.
Because I would really want to make
Yeah, we've had numerous conversations with them over a long period of time. And yes, they're very open to us offering service, but they haven't wanted to make that a 100% gig symmetrical
Thank you,
development.
I just wanted to know if, you know, I figured you'd be taking advantage of
Oh, yeah,
every new large development.
very much so.
Okay, thank you.
Could you just describe your, the plan for the sale were to happen on schedule? You've got kind of a transition budget, I would think, here to a new owner of this enterprise.
Brian, no, we haven't. This is a budget that assumes ownership of BT by the city for a full year. We've actually built the budget monthly and split it into two halves because we do expect, you know, we're hopeful of completion of the sale by the end of this calendar year, but this does not include any of those costs of ownership under a different owner. This is purely assuming the city continues.
Then, second question is just, could you describe the work that BT's engaged in regarding sort of bridging or closing the digital divide and some of the efforts you've undertaken in that area?
I think by and large what we try and do is clearly we offer a number of programs for people on low income, one for school children who receive subsidized meals. They can get BT's internet for as little as $9.95 a month. We also became the first ISP in Vermont to offer Lifeline, which is a program for low-income families. Again, that can provide a subsidy. We offer the service for $9.95 a month, but they can actually get a subsidy of over $9 a month towards the cost of that. So, and we offer 25 meg symmetrical to those families. The reason it's only 25 meg is that we have a lot of equipment that we've deployed elsewhere. As we move to gig symmetrical throughout the city, that equipment becomes available, which means that we can cost effectively provide an outstanding level of service to those families without investing hundreds of thousands of dollars to do so. The equipment's quite well, works very well. We do that. We're a major supporter of BTV Ignite and continue to be so and will be going forward. And we do public Wi-Fi in a number of spots, and we're always open to any opportunity that's presented to us where we can actually provide BT services for public good that can help address the digital divide and the digitally disadvantaged. And again, nothing's going to change on that going forward.
Thank you, Councilor Pine. Other questions for the council? Hearing none. Thank you very much for that presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for all the good work. Item number 4 is water, wastewater / stormwater, and presentation from Megan Moore. Welcome, Megan.
Hi, everybody. Happy to be meeting with you guys again. So today we're going to go over the water resources budgets. It is 3 different budgets, our enterprise water resources utilities. So yeah, first slide. So, sorry, are you? Oh, no, I wasn't there. Sorry, that's just where I was before. Just quickly, you know, we share the same mission statement as the rest of DPW, stewarding Burlington's infrastructure, and obviously we're really focused on the environmental piece. Next slide. We are unique, I think, you know, particularly in Vermont and even across the nation, that we are truly integrated, being with water, wastewater, and stormwater sitting under one house. A lot of times stormwater and wastewater are together, but to actually have all 3 of those utilities with one leader, you know, is something that I do think provides us opportunities. There is a lot of cross and overlap. They do have 3 different sets of rules and regulations, and that is a challenge sometimes for us to keep up to speed, and especially with the changing face in the legislative environment, it has been a challenge to try to stay on top of it all. Next slide. You know, ultimately, I always say Burlington can't exist without Burlington Water Resources. You can't have a dense urban environment and be able to, without having clean drinking water ample opportunity for the sewage to leave the buildings, and then also, important drainage. And these are just a summary of some of the services, the important services that we do provide. We have a huge roster of assets. I've actually grown it from past presentations because there's some that I forget about, and it ranges from the horizontal, which are a system of pipes for the sewer and for water distribution, but we have a number of vertical assets. Our water plant down on the waterfront, we have pump houses, we have the 2 reservoirs that hold 7 million gallons so that if we ever can't produce water, we have enough water for a day's worth of storage. We have the water towers, which I'll talk a little bit about because those are some assets that need some help. And one that we hadn't really thought a lot about until this year with the water billing issue, we have over 10,000 water meters. Those are assets. Those need to be dealt with as assets and invested in as assets. Next slide. We've got a lot of great things going on. As you guys are probably aware, driving around on the street, we're certainly digging into things and replacing our very aging infrastructure, particularly on the water side. While that's happening, we are continuing a level of investment on the water and the wastewater and the stormwater side. There's a number of plant things that we've done to improve upon. We were able to install an infiltration system at the bottom of King Street. So before that paving project happened, we took that opportunity to keep that stormwater from ever even getting into the combined sewer system. And along with our actual brick and mortar capital planning, we are really diving into our capital planning, which is going to help us better develop what our financial picture looks like. I think we've frequently been in the mode of just fixing things as they break, right? And we're trying to be more proactive with asset management, which then gives us all the numbers that we can then use to hopefully work with you guys to come up with what our financial picture looks like in the future. Next slide. So for those of you who don't recall from your review of the packet, we are looking at an overall 4.95 increase for the typical single-family customer. We're going to talk more about that at the end of the presentation, and first we're just going to go into some of our high-level goals and some specific details about the revenue and expense side drivers for this year's budget and the proposed rate increase. So starting with, it's been a balance of sort of what do we need to do now and making sure we're looking out far enough in the future so that we're not making decisions that are going to make it really hard for us to do what we need to do in the future. So on the near term, sort of operational and capital needs side, our primary goal is always to make sure we have sufficient resources to give everybody, safe water. I'm not sure where I got the word smooth. I'm not sure where that came from. Smooth and safe water, not just safe, but it's smooth. Sorry, that's totally a typo. I have to figure out what word I meant. Wastewater and stormwater. I think it's smooth stormwater operations. And to meet regulatory compliance, but now I know I'm going to be known as the smooth water operator. Smooth, well, I won't go into the song. So our other big things, as you guys all know, we had to figure out how to deal with the revenue shortfall that came about because of the meter billing issue. And then figure out also how to come up with sufficient resources that we're going to be able to invest in the solutions that are going to help that sort of thing never happen again. And while we're doing all that, we're also still trying to invest in this infrastructure and keep up with everything else great that the city is doing. Next slide. On the long-term side, we need to be looking ahead and making sure that no matter what we choose to do this year, we're going to be able to meet debt service requirements for both our existing bonds as well as the future water bonds that we know we're going to pull under our existing $8.3 million authorization, and likely for wastewater and maybe even stormwater bonds. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about why I think that may be in our future. We're also trying to maintain neutral or surplus-oriented annual budgets. In the past, we have used our cash, but because we're going to be doing the UVM repayments, we have to be very aware that we can't be letting that cash trickle down too much. The other piece that the mayor and we all talked about a lot, and we don't have the exact answer for, but we want to start looking more at balancing how much we're spending out of our annual budgets on capital versus what we're doing with debt finance. There's probably some blend or portfolio given the things that we need to do where we can maximize what we're able to get done, right? And also spread it out over the future ratepayers. If we're building something that's going to last 25, 50 years, we don't necessarily want today's ratepayers to be paying for it all in one big chunk. We want to be spreading it out. So in that light, we're maintaining sufficient capital funding to make sure that wastewater and stormwater needs are met, but we are postponing, particularly on the wastewater side, perhaps 1 to 2 years, a few things that we in a perfect world would have done this year. But with the budget pressures and with knowing that we're kind of getting to the bonding point anyway, we did make the decision to go ahead and push those out and really focus our efforts on, okay, what does our financing plan look like? We're also leveraging our existing bond authorization for a long life asset, the reservoir roof that we really need to replace. Next slide. So diving down a little deeper, the key drivers on the revenue side are certainly that loss of volumetric revenue. It's not just about repaying UVM, it's the fact that we thought we had all that water to bill and now we don't have it. And it is offset mildly by some positive corrections. As you guys know, we did find some people that we had underbilled, and so it's not as bad as it could have been if it was just UVM, but we still are dealing with that loss of revenue, and that alone is responsible for 55 and 52% respectively of the water and wastewater increases. On the wastewater side, and we did mention this, I believe, last year, but South Burlington is taking back some of their customers. They're building a pump station, and that's going to result in additional revenue loss. On the stormwater side, fortunately, because we're doing the reassessment of the impervious surface, our revenue is actually going up on that, and we were really lucky to receive a huge grant from the federal highways for an outfall repair, and also $25,000 sort of. It was just a happy day where somebody says, hey, I've got $25,000 for you just because you're a stormwater utility. V-Trans is giving that out to all the stormwater utilities. I didn't ask, given time, how much time you... I am, but I know we started late, so I'll continue to try to go fast. So on the expense side, I mentioned that, we want to make sure, and we actually got the statements of qualifications back from two folks. We did an RFQ for our meter to cash billing improvements. And so we're in the process of reviewing those and really excited to get somebody on board who's going to help us continue with the revenue assurance process. Because we anticipate that they may make recommendations that are going to require some additional expenditure, we do have some placeholders in there so that we're going to be able to implement those as quickly as possible. On the personnel side, the main personnel shift is that we continue to evaluate our staffing resources with regard to our engineering and planning team. We are doing so much work, and I'm still playing around with exactly where the resources are. And this particular year, we were finding that water and wastewater, because of all of the projects and because they're sometimes more emergent, we're taking up a lot of the resources. But we want to make sure stormwater is getting its needs met. So we did shift some resources more directly to where it had kind of already been going, water and wastewater. And we're going to look at meeting our stormwater engineering need, which is a little bit more specialized than your typical sort of water resources engineer, with bringing in a consulting engineer, sort of an on-call, somebody who's immediately available within 2 weeks, that can be, as much part of our team as possible, and kind of see if that might work, especially to bridge the gap to maybe a future time in which we might have to bring on more resources. I'm not prepared to make that decision right now, which is why I'm kind of trying out this opportunity. We've added some money to our safety equipment, to purchase safety equipment specifically on the wastewater side for confined space entry, and then on the water side, particularly for excavation safety. We struggle still with, external costs that are increasing. Our biosolids contract, so that's the contract to actually haul out the solids that come out of the wastewater process, did go up by $40,000. And then we did have to increase our debt service line in order to meet both the 2 million series that we just sold, as well as we are anticipating selling about 1.8 million this fall to get ready for next year. Just a reminder of why we're even doing those projects. This is a list of the streets that we are working on for this particular contract, in addition to last year's streets. And this work that the voters have funded is so timely. There's an interesting report that just came out where they looked at water break rates, and just if you look at all pipe materials, water break rates have increased 27% in the last 6 years. Everything's getting old, so we're not alone. The really important thing is that 82% of cast iron pipes are experiencing a 46% increase in break rates. And guess what? 75% of our pipes are cast iron. So, we are hopefully preventing us from having a exponential increase in breaks. That's what people are seeing everywhere else. So again, thank you for being willing to allow us to invest in this. even though we are dialing back just so slightly on wastewater, overall, we are still spending so much more on capital than we have, prior to FY16. Really proud of the city for dealing with the infrastructure deficit and letting us do our job, which is fixing the stuff that we need to fix so that we can keep maintaining that smooth water. That's comments that slipped in, so I'm glad we didn't have anything about it. Why is smooth in there? I don't know. So we're going to come back to the future piece, but I wanted to draw your attention specifically to the red box. There's a lot of information there. Those are the monthly amounts of the different portions of your water resource rate. The blue is approximately how much a single-family home would spend on their water. The brown for wastewater and green for stormwater. And then the triangle is the percent increase overall, so that 4.95, and it's a dual access, so you have to look on the right for the percent increase and on the left for the overall amount. So the total bill is looking like it's going to be about $67. That does represent a $3.18 approximate increase per month and a $38 increase over the year. Again, this is due to increases on the water and the wastewater rate, about a 6% increase in wastewater and a 4.9% increase in water. The math, if you're trying to do it in your head, doesn't work out quite so well because of the magnitude of the wastewater generally being more dollar-wise. There is no increase in stormwater. However, some commercial customers may see an increase or a decrease in their overall stormwater bill, not due to the fee, but because we've measured their impervious or remeasured it. And if they've added impervious or if our previous measurements were wrong, that's going to be corrected. Next slide. So that gets you to the numbers themselves. You can go, next slide, please. So you can see in the past years, as I mentioned, we did run a planned deficit, and this year we are not running the deficit. We are having neutral or positive surpluses at the end. And if you go down to the very bottom, we are continuing to track days of cash on hand, and you see that wastewater is getting, it's getting lower, and we're keeping our eye on that and trying to figure out how we're going to mitigate that. This is based on the most conservative possible estimate of days of cash on hand that we have gotten from our auditor. There's a lot of different ways of looking at cash, and this is the hardest or most conservative way. It does also include the estimate of, it's an estimate of the net impact or the impact of net usage decrease. So I've tried to model what I think maybe the end of the year is going to look like, and that's your estimated cash on hand at FY18. And then FY19 includes an estimated repayment of that UVM. So should we come to agreements on how we're going to repay it, and ideally pay it over 6 years, I've calculated that in as an impact to the cash. So.
Is the bond in here too, or no? The repayment of the bond?
Yep. So it's in our expense line. Yes. Yep. So challenges. Thanks for. We'll talk about challenges, and then we'll talk about all the positives and opportunities, right? Because every challenge gives an opportunity. So we've got the water debt. You guys already know about that. We were successful in maintaining our A1 rating. We want to maintain that or increase it in the future, and we've got to maintain that 1.25 debt coverage ratio, which I can't remember what the number was, but we're good on that. Yes. Looking at water, we've always talked about the fact that 8.3 million authorization is only going to replace a certain percentage of our pipes, and we may need to replace more. We also, with all the work that's going on and the new streets, the additional streets that happened, we're having to spend even more than we kind of thought we were going to have to spend in this time period, so we may need to go out for authorization for continuing that work, maybe sooner than we had originally anticipated. And also just to flag it, the high service tanks that I mentioned, UVM tank, and in particular Redstone, which is the 1934 tank, Redstone was already sort of planned for some maintenance in 2021, and our recent inspection indicates that might have to get moved up. And the UVM tank maintenance in particular, painting that tank, it has lead-based paint on it, which means we have to do lead abatement on a 150-foot tall tank, which is going to be very, very costly. Looking into whether or not, even though it's maintenance, it could possibly be bonded for or even through the state get some money. So more to come on that, but just know that that's looming literally over your head. On wastewater, we're coming to the end of useful life on some of our assets that are in the wastewater treatment plants and our pump stations. And so to collectively, if you look down at the graph down below, this is based on our capital plan, what more or less what we should be spending in those various years. We're spending less than what is listed here on the FY19, right? I said we're dialing back a little bit. And what we're looking at is aggregating all of those costs sort of through FY23, 24, and potentially looking at a wastewater bond to try to address that. At the same time, our collection system, our sewer pipes are also challenged and sometimes cause sinkholes. And we're looking at about a $1 million need per year for at least the next 5 years on the sewer side. Same thing on the stormwater side. Even though stormwater's younger, somebody made the decision of putting in corrugated metal pipes, which are corroding due to the salt. So they're very holy. The pipe that collapsed, I believe, on Kilburn was a corrugated metal pipe where the dump truck was rising up in the air. That can happen and will happen if we don't start giving attention to our stormwater pipes. We also have about 11 of our outfalls are in really, really bad shape, and we're looking at about $3 million to fix the worst of the worst. Okay, so looking ahead, as we model it now, in 20 and 21, we are still looking at between a 4 and 5% rate increase. Certainly, we're going to be doing everything we can, and that's what the next slide is about, to try to figure out how we could even potentially temper those increases. And just to pause briefly, since 1989, and I know some of you were here perhaps back around then, this is what the chart of our rate increases look like. And you can see that we've kind of been all over the place. And in particular, 96 through 2008, except for 1 year, we had no rate increases. So we are, in essence, kind of dealing with what happened back then and the fact that we should have been making investments. If we had been making investments in our pipe infrastructure back then, we would not be dealing with some of the large infrastructure deficit that we have. And for a bigger perspective, there have been numerous studies, but consistently the CPI for water sewer, if you compare water and sewer rates, is not track regular CPI. It's usually around 5.5%. So for us to have a 4 to 5.5% increase is not sort of abnormal compared to what people are seeing in the data across the nation. And there is more information at the end of your packet because we probably won't get to it. I have a couple of other links to information about why we're normal, and why the cost increases that we're seeing are not necessarily something to be worried about from a perspective of us doing something wrong. Next slide. So why is it all going to be okay? Or hopefully okay. So all of my estimates are as conservative as possible, being that we know there are these big projects that are about to be built. I have not put those big projects into my revenue stream because you never know what can happen with one of those big projects. And I don't want to be basing our financial decisions and our financial health now on the mall, and then something happens with permits and all of a sudden they're delayed multiple years. Not that that's going to happen, right? But that example.
Because the water billing is not our only problem.
I guess, I know. That example. There's many examples where you expect something to be built, right? We all think something's going to be built like this, and it takes 2 years instead of 1 year. We don't want to rely on that. But as it comes online, we're going to be putting that into our model, using that real data, and hopefully see the future look a little brighter. On the revenue insurance program, we think long-term that is also going to pay dividends. There could be some modest initial investments. We may have to pay a little bit, but we're going to be doing that so that we can hopefully get a lot more revenue, better meters, better technology, et cetera. One of the things I'm most excited about is finally having a robust financial plan where everything's rolled up and I can run a whole bunch of different scenarios and see all these cool graphs. If anybody ever wants to check it out with me, come by my office, I'll show you. But with that, it now gives us the platform so we can start looking at potential alternative rate structures, which in particular could reduce the impact on the residential customer. We're already looking at that. We weren't prepared to bring that to you, but it's something that I highly anticipate we'll be looking at for FY20. Through that, we're also going to be exploring opportunities for full cost recovery. A lot of towns charge for fire services. We don't. We're making water, and when we dig up a street, we're having to dig up people's fire services and reattach them. So the ratepayers are ending up subsidizing potentially people who have, direct fire services, and it is fairly typical across the nation to charge for that. It's one example of something we could charge for and would be coming back to you with a proposal on. As I mentioned before, we're going to be focusing on a lot of our planning efforts on that balance of pay-go versus financial debt finance capital. And overall, I want to strive, as a ratepayer myself, I want to strive for predictable, modest increases versus the crazy train that, as you can see, we've been on, certainly in the 90s and prior to that, where you'd have no rate increases and then big rate increases. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Financial capability assessment as part of our ongoing future planning for the Lake Champlain TMDL. We're going to make sure that the state works with us so we don't get put on such a crazy schedule that we're going to blow the bank for everybody. There has to be a consideration of how much people can pay for all of the work that we have to do. And on the asset management investment piece, I'm just going to put my plug in. Water Resources is ready to go. We are doing asset management the best we can with spreadsheets, and we want a program and we want software, and we're waiting for the general fund to complete their ongoing asset management assessment, but we really need to do that. So this last slide, this is the overall request. These are the proposed rates. Stormwater is not changing. Wastewater is going up to $5.82, and water is going to $4.31.
Thank you, Megan. Questions for Megan, Councilor Klein, Councilor Tracy?
Megan, a few faces, including mine, got confused when you said some property owners get direct fire service and in some places we charge for that. What did you mean?
I
You
meant
mean
some
sprinklers?
places in the nation.
But did you mean sprinklers? Is that what you mean?
Sprinklers, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep, so especially big buildings will have a domestic service that they use for their tap, and they get charged for that. But their fire service is just there, and we're maintaining it and serving water to it, but they're often called ready to serve or standby charges.
And then the other question is about efficiency and efforts to encourage, it kind of works against us in a way, to get customers to be more efficient about their water use, but do we do anything the way BED does to help customers be more efficient about the way they use water?
We don't directly at this point, except for we do have so we track people's water usage, and if it comes across as being more than double the previous month, people get a contact, a letter, a phone call to say, hey, something's going on. At the BTV block party, we're going to have leak detection tablets that you can toss in your toilet, and if your toilet bowl fills with red color, then you know that your toilet is leaking, because that can be a cause. So we're starting a couple of things. I 100% think it's going to come in the future, and I think we may, through that model I talked about, one of the things is you can actually zoom in on neighborhoods that are going to be more burdened by a rate increase, and then target your efforts there. So it's definitely in the back of our head. We don't have any official programs per se right now.
One quick note on that too, this 2030 district.
Yes.
Includes conservation of water as.
Yes,
I think,
reduction by
national
50%,
goal.
yeah.
Now, it's regulated for electricity that they
Yep.
offer incentives to purchase more efficient appliances, but maybe we, as a utility, would look at the idea of low-flow toilets as an incentive to
Yep.
do low-flow toilets.
And that's what's probably one of the first steps in an affordability program. Before we actually start offering people discounts, a lot of communities have actually just focused on sort of plumbing efficiencies and targeting it that way and getting people using only the water they need to use, particularly low-income folks, because they may be in a situation where they're not able to.
Councilor Tracy, then Paul, then Busher.
Thank you, President Wright, and thank you for the presentation. Been hearing a lot from members of the public concern about stormwater dumps in the lake, or just sewage going into the lake. And wondering if there are any of the capital investments that we're making this year or in future years will do more to prevent that from happening. And then sort of more broadly, how the statewide lake cleanup legislation does and does not impact some of our revenues, like are there unfunded mandates in there? How do you see that kind of playing out for us at the city level?
Yep, so on the sewage dump piece, so the stormwater projects like the King Street infiltration system, anytime we're able to take stormwater off of the wastewater system, which is what that project does, and I believe we're doing one at Park Street as well this year, that helps manage the volume. I mean, the particular incidences that happened this year weren't necessarily due to the stormwater piece or to a lack of investment, though we certainly are going to be looking at how we can build a better, mousetrap and even create more redundancy. But a lot of the sewage overflows are driven by the stormwater piece, and so it's all about how we make those retrofits, how we figure out with private properties, which we're already doing, when they're redeveloping a property like the mall, that they take their water off of the combined sewer system. And if they can't take it fully off, they put it through a system of tanks to slow it down. Your other question was?
Statewide legislation.
The statewide legislation. Well, I'm not aware currently of any defunded, there's lots of unfunded mandates, but as far as like the money that we're currently getting from the state, part of our biggest challenge is that it is so bricks and mortar oriented, and that you have to have these shovel-ready projects. And so thinking back to what I talked about, the engineering planning team, and making sure we have enough bodies to be just cranking on those projects and looking out ahead is a really critical piece of grabbing the current money that we have. We are very interested in the bigger statewide funding, because we do think that all people need to be contributing, to that. And I'm not sure exactly what's going to come out of the years to come. The time is now, and I can't remember if S-260 did get passed or not. It did get passed, right? It hasn't been signed, right? So we're waiting and seeing if that moves forward.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councilor Paul.
Thank you. So I just had one question, way back at the beginning, when you were talking about the revenue side, the loss of Hadley Road. So I'm just trying to understand, how long have you known about this, loss? Because obviously they've been building this. I assume this is not something that happened overnight.
No, I think we definitely mentioned it last year, which was my first budget year. We said that it was coming in FY19, the half of it, and then the rest of it will go away in FY20, because it is going to be online as of December.
So, you had said that was 22% of the rate increase, in wastewater, another 52% for the, meter billing issue, that's 74%. For just two things, right?
Yep.
Okay, so, is the 110,000 net?
No, I mean, that's the revenue that we typically get from them.
So what's the expense?
There won't be, if you're trying to, see if there's just, it's hard to say. It's not like we get to decrease our number of pipes, or we get to decrease our energy costs. Like, you could maybe allocate out what their, I don't know if I'm understanding your question. If you're asking if there's a
cost to doing service.
For them,
There's a
not substantial. I mean, there is, but like, it's so minuscule, because we still have to have the same size plant. I have to have the same size personnel. It's not like I can reduce my energy costs, because, and this is the challenge of being in a small city, is I have so few people to spread my costs over. I can't shrink anything just because somebody doesn't, somebody gets more efficient with their water. I still have to have the same number of pipes, the same number of people, et cetera. It's very challenging because of the economy of scale, and that's why, well, depending on what people believe, going up and being vertical is very helpful on the water, wastewater side from having more of a user base.
Okay, and just so I understand, Hadley Road, is Hadley Road the only road in South Burlington that would provide service?
I think there is still some remaining parts. I don't have a good map in my head of the wastewater area, but that's the only one that was sort of easily grabbed off by them. Because they have a pump station, so instead of it gravity draining to us, they're putting a pump station at the bottom and pumping it back to their plant.
I mean, I guess, one of the things that, and I haven't seen this, so I'm not really sure, maybe I've missed it. By resolution several years ago, we were gonna be given projections, 3 and 5 year projections on budgeting. Rustin used to do that.
Yep, so
And so I think, I'm not talking about by, literally, 2021. I'm talking about further out when we were given what-if scenarios. So it seems as though these are all what-if scenarios that, we have no guarantee that they aren't gonna go and take all their roads back, right?
Right, we don't have that much. I can get back to you with exactly how much more of our revenue it would be due to South Burlington. It's not that much. So like, I'm just saying, I'm not worried about it, having looked at how many accounts are left. This was the big chunk that could be taken back.
Okay. I mean, I'm just concerned because I see what you're saying about the fact that nationwide, we're not that high, but I have heard from people who are very concerned and have been for some time about the, and it could very well be because there weren't investments made years ago, but in the minds of consumers,
They don't care about that. Yeah.
What they care about is what their rate
Absolutely.
And as we all know, there's a lot of people in Burlington that are getting older, and
Mhm.
this is a considerable, 5% is not what
Yep.
their income hasn't increased 5%.
Absolutely.
So we just want to be mindful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Busher, and then Councilor Modell.
So you had, in your presentation, you talked about the pipes that distribute the water.
Yes.
But we didn't really talk about, I don't see the information about wastewater.
Yep, so though I was going quickly. If you go to the looking ahead to FY '20 and beyond challenges,
Yeah.
I don't have a graph yet of what the age of those are or what our predictions are, but the stars, when I say collection system capital needs,
Yeah.
those are the pipes. So there's 5 million on wastewater side and about 5 million on stormwater.
So that gets to my concern. So, you know, these costs, and I've asked for a question of how many fees, not just from you, but the total fees that we are going to, that the resident is going to realize this year, and then the cost of all the bonding that we're now going to realize and what that means for everybody. So I'm interested in that overall. But so in my ward, there were a number of unfortunate sewer line breaks, and so people came to me to understand, to try to figure out why the city can't help.
You're talking about the private laterals, yep.
Private level. And so, like with water, you can get a loan or something from the city, there's some.
Because we do the work, we're able to give you a payment plan.
Right, and I understand you don't do the work, but I guess I'm saying this to the mayor, you know, these hits were $10,000, $14,000, sometimes more, and people, I mean,
They don't have it.
One person, she's 90 years old.
Yep.
And, so, I'm just trying to figure out what we as a city can do to provide something to the resident. I'm not looking for the city to pay for it, but a way that it's either a lien on the property or a loan that could be paid off. I really think that this is really important. And so the age of the sewer pipe and the sewer lines and the connection, which I learned is like one pipe just slipping into another one. They're not really even secure. I've learned a lot about this. I started in 1980-something on the DPW commission with wastewater and sewage, and I never thought I would go back to it, but I am again, here I'm back again. So, I mean, this is really important stuff.
It is.
And so, I really would like the department, I'm not expecting anything to happen this year, obviously, but I'd really like some creativity around what could be done.
I mean, Chapin can attest the fact that we've had numerous conversations and have some ideas.
He's heard from me.
Yes. But I mean, I think for the past 2 or 3 years, we've been talking about that specifically and what it looks like and how, even if we're not going to do the work, how we might be able to facilitate. Because it's also to our advantage when somebody has to cut into a brand new road like East Ave because their sewer line broke. We would rather incentivize people to be proactive if they can with their own infrastructure, you know. And it's hard to do when it costs $14,000. Nobody has that kind of money sitting around.
And I guess I didn't realize the cost. So, you know, years ago, I helped try to facilitate the way we help residents for water, because an older couple came to me when I first got elected. So here I am again trying to see.
It's the same issue, just we don't have as much ability to affect it right
And
now.
I understand the difference is we don't do the work. I get that.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Busher. Councilor Modell.
Thank you, President Rice. So I think I understand the need for is it 4.5%, 5% increase for 19? The making up the lost revenue from UVM, that's like a one time, that'll be an ongoing increase. That won't drive future rate increases.
It is
Or it does.
it does because you're paying it out of your cash. So if you want to keep your cash,
Okay, you're assuming 6-year repayment.
I am at this point.
Okay.
And I'm also in my model is that future bonding in water and wastewater and stormwater.
How much? All of
I'd
it was
have.
authorized?
No, it is not authorized borrowing. It is projected borrowing given what our capital needs are. So I'm presenting, should we get authorization for stormwater and wastewater?
No, my question is, but was authorization in the 2016 bond.
Yes, for water.
For water?
Yes.
Okay. So how much of that has already been bonded for?
That we are up to, we've used now 5.25, and so we have about 3 million left.
Okay. So you're assuming, in terms of your projections for 2021,
Yep.
you're assuming that
We're
the
gonna-
rest of that is issued?
Yes.
And what else are you assuming in terms of additional?
I'd have to look at my model and give you that an exact number, but I have projected out what I think we need to keep spending and assumed potentially some additional borrowing, but I don't think that would hit until FY '22 anyway.
So in all three areas, that's additional bonding between the three areas of
Yes, so the authorization that we already have, we would be using that up and potentially authorizing, if we could get an authorization for more to meet what I think our capital needs are on the water side. The stormwater, wastewater, we're gonna have to be coming back to you with, even the request to bond. I'm just saying that when I look at my capital plan,
Yes.
there is a infrastructure deficit. We do not have enough money to do the work that we need to do.
Okay.
And so we would have to bond.
Understood. I'd love to know that number.
The number, okay.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I am very concerned about potentially year after year of 5% increases.
Yep.
I mean, that's gonna be a big problem, so I'm glad that you're thinking about some other way to distribute. the
Absolutely.
additional costs, and so that people who have very limited ability to pay are not gonna be, really driven up against the wall of, having to make a decision of, can I stay in my home?
Yep. And a lot of that will be tempered by the additional development. As I said, I'm trying to give you the worst case scenario, and next year I can give you a different case scenario, but I'd rather tell you how bad it could be, and then hopefully with all of our creativity and with the additional developments, that number is gonna look a lot better. That is my intent, and well,
I share the concern as well.
I share the concern as somebody, who has a family and uses water and wastewater.
Megan
so.
referenced it, but to just shed a little more detail on it, we may be able to shift some of that bonding. We may be able to pay for it by less pay-as-you-go. Basically, spread out the cost over a longer period
Exactly.
of time instead of paying for as much on an ongoing basis as we
Yeah.
have been. Done that a little bit to some extent in the budget before you to keep it under 5%, and there may be an opportunity and need to do more of that. I
Right.
think it's intellectually appropriate to spread it out. Yeah.
Yeah, and we can, so there's nuggets in there still of pay-go capital that you could drive down further and help with the rate.
Okay.
But it's, until we get into what that looks like, it's hard to.
Quick question, Councilor Klein.
Inclining block rates with electricity have been successful, and
Yep.
you're looking at something pretty much along those lines?
Yes, that would be the alternative rate structure. It would actually, we look at a two-tier rate structure with a fixed cost and bringing some of the cost more back into fixed. And when we model that impact for a lot of, I think for all single-family home customers, even with the rate increase, their overall bill went down. But it means it's going up somewhere else, and so we have to have a larger conversation about what we're okay with. And so FY19 is about doing that work and working with you guys to figure out what a different rate structure might look like that everybody can get on board with, because there's definitely ones out there.
Thanks, Megan.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Appreciate the presentation, good work. And can you provide that number to Councilor Nodell? Can you send it to both?
Yeah, so you're looking just,
What's that unfunded capital gap?
okay, I'll figure out exactly which
That's,
page to send you.
Okay.
Yeah,
Based on what you know.
absolutely.
Thank you. Item number 5 is the capital improvement program budget. And we'll be hearing from Norm Baldwin and Mark Keenan.
President Wright, I want to apologize. I have to step out for just a couple minutes, but I will be back. Full set.
Okay. Welcome, Martha. Norm?
Thank you.
Hi, Kurt. How are you?
So, we are here to talk about our capital improvement program budget. And I'll just start by saying that one of the things that's key to this capital improvement effort is that we are understanding that the public has entrusted us their funds to advance a number of initiatives, projects that the mayor's made commitments to, and we were staying focused on that. The challenge, of course, is as things come up, we will encounter things that we didn't anticipate when we developed this plan. But we are moving ahead and making great progress on many of these projects, and things are gearing up. So I'm going to try to be as brief as I can because I know we are behind. So as I've said, this project, this capital investment follows our plan communicated to the public and their expectation, meeting their expectations. Along that path, of course, we encounter new problems, new challenges that the city has with their capital systems that need evaluation. And we have actually a committee formed to evaluate new challenges that come in order of priority and how it still achieves the objective of meeting the expectations of the public at the onset of this investment approval of bonding, while still trying to solve the problems that sit in front of us today. So moving to the next slide here's kind of the snapshot of all the asset classes that we're focused on and improving and maintaining and taking care of. On the left side is the list, and the right side is the funding resources itself.
So in this, it's really become a collaborative business. So the capital improvement plan works with all of the departments. And over that time, it's a building collaboration. We've been working on the fleet analysis that includes BED, it includes the airport, it includes the schools, as well as all of general fund. We've done the door and video systems that go to all the municipal buildings. We joined the 2030 district, and so we're working with BED on that. I've been working with UVM on the collaboration from the agreement that we created with them this year that provided some of the funding for this capital plan. So we're really working with everyone to create a relationship, to build a rapport, but to understand the big picture and work on that big picture and what's the best strategy long-term for the city for our capital.
So, giving you a status of projects they're moving ahead in FY18. As Martha mentioned, the video systems, the door systems, facilities improvements that impact service to the community, like Letty Arena and the refrigeration. Our fleet vehicles, looking very closely at what our real needs are versus what we have had in the past, and really gearing up for what is the big important piece to at least Public Works is improving our streets, improving our sidewalks, and being aggressive in pursuing getting a lot of this work done. And so in 18 we've got a lot done, but in 19 we anticipate we're going to go even further and harder to try to achieve these objectives, while keeping in mind that we are going to coordinate that effort with Water Resources, and Megan had done a presentation earlier. So there's not wasted effort that we encounter some problem later, we've put money into a street and then it blows up. We don't want to see that happen, so we're working hard to avoid that as much as possible. Fleet maintenance, facility renovations, and then Martha, maybe you can speak to the fleet analysis.
So the fleet analysis is almost complete. We're waiting for the report. They've done a utilization study, or in process of a utilization study. Our hope is that the plan is that they will come back and show us from this utilization study, do we need less vehicles in a certain department? Do we need more? Are we using them the right way? Is there a way we can share them? And then also provide a financing strategy to us of how can we pay for this fleet going forward. With 350 vehicles, if we were to turn them in a timely manner, it would be about $1 million a year. So how can we finance that on an ongoing basis? There were 5 years, I believe, that we had no financing on vehicles. So we're catching up now to having vehicles that are being maintained in a timely manner, and hopefully we can turn them in the right manner in the future, which aids in our trade-in value. It also aids in the time that's spent in labor in our fleet maintenance. So there's operational savings as well as capital savings by having a good strategy moving forward.
So, as I mentioned, there are new projects that came on the horizon since last year's presentation, and we've done a lot to complete the tasks that were listed, but we've also encountered new challenges moving forward. And here's basically a list. Well, the most Rock Point Bridge particularly is a bridge that's on the bike path itself. We have an obligation under the lease agreement to maintain that bridge. We are doing an assessment, and we're examining alternatives and putting together costs. We've secured, I think, $1 million overall for a project to try to address those needs. There is a responsibility of the city to maintain that bridge to allow access on the opposite side for Rock Point School. And so we are taking that very seriously and acting on that as it is some measure of responsibility and liability to the city. Those are the types of things that kind of drive us moving forward. And of course, I'm not going to read all the list of other products, but that's an example of a new challenge. Goals and milestones for FY19. We're going to deliver on an expanded capital investment, both water, streets, sidewalks, bike paths, buildings, fleet. You saw this spring that we were doing a lot of work on Pine Street. There's an example of that. We're doing coordinated effort in that regard. Water Resources doing their water relining. They're doing stormwater improvements in advance of the parkway. We're doing repaving. It's all a coordinated effort. It's a lot of work. Part of that is there's a great.
Sorry, can I interrupt you for one
Yep.
second? I gotta step out for a minute.
Yep.
Councilor Nodell's gonna take over.
Okay, so because of all this work, there's an extreme disturbance in the communities and neighborhood, and people need to be informed, need to be aware of how we're proceeding with our work. And so we have a public information officer who's done a considerable amount of effort to kind of tell the story so people are aware and not surprised. And I think that's made it much easier for both the public and us as Public Works doing that work. So that's worth noting. Along with that also is the improved collaboration between departments and enterprise funds. We have to coordinate our effort with Water Resource, who has limited funds. How do we pull that off? It's an extreme challenge given there's some latency in water, in stormwater being positioned to be able to fund projects that support doing work underground before we complete our paving and sidewalk. But we are making it happen. One big expense within this coming years will be the Champlain Parkway is a major project. I think construction alone is around $27 million, along with all various other costs. Our standard 2% local match will likely be much more than that, given the soil liabilities that we're negotiating with state. And so we are watching that very closely and putting together estimates and numbers to inform you as we go forward, but it is going to be more than the 2% that people reasonably expect. Then we have all the details of these budgets, and I don't know if Martha, you want to go into that, or?
The overall budget is about $38.5 million. Of that, $12 million of it is Champlain Parkway. This year, it was a $22 million budget. So we're still increasing the overall budget this year from last year. The previous year, it was $11 million. So we are in the midst of a huge initiative in capital work. So I think that we just have to recognize that takes a toll on everyone, from the people trying to drive down Pine Street to everywhere else, and to the resources that it takes to get the work done as well. So we did balance the budget. It shows a surplus of $236,000, sorry. And 200 of that goes to the permit reform to be carried forward. So in reality, it's a balanced budget.
Right, there's just a quick question. I have 2 sheets that goes to FY19 general fund capital budget.
So I corrected, the correct one is the one that has a $9 million bonding, not the $10 million bonding. And should X off the other one, I'm sorry. So in reality, we bonded, and Rich just completed the bonding for the $9 million, the 6.1 for the institutions, and the annual is usually done in November. So there's a $17 million worth of bonding in the fiscal year 19 uses of funds. That leaves on the overall bond that we approved in 2016, $10.5 million. So that is the correct budget page.
So the next sheet is talking about the expanded paving and expanded sidewalk as I've noted, our teams are expanding their effort to do more sidewalk work. I think we've reached our limit of what we can in-house complete in on our initiatives, and so we've gone out and hired contractors to do the balance of work, and obviously that requires a little more field inspection and involvement with them, and having more hands-on work with them closely. Preventative maintenance, part of our sidewalk program is we want to have good investment and not replace entire sections of sidewalk for one failed slab. So the preventive maintenance program of diamond cutting sidewalks, I think, has worked very well to at least in the immediate future solve a problem while not doing a full reinvestment on a street that potentially could have good slabs of sidewalk. So that's a good investment on our part, and managing our costs. As I noted, Champlain Parkway is slated to start in spring of 2019. There is a significant cost with that project, and you can see there's a $12 million listing there, but that is just for 1 year. Martha, I don't know if you want to talk about the renovation of buildings and the bike path.
I want to keep short on time. I know that Cindy will speak to the bike path, so I'm happy to move forward.
So then there's multi-year projects. The Parkway is an example. It's going to be many years in the making. It still has been many years in the making already. Great streets. We have a number of streets we're working on. We're working on St. Paul. We'll be working on Main Street. We've been working on Cherry Street and Bank Street, as you know, City Hall Park. Shelburne Street Roundabout, that is a state-managed project that we are participating in, that we are a local interest in, make sure our community's satisfied with that work by the state. Rail Enterprise Project is the connection. I don't think I need to go any further on any of those lists of projects. You can read those and follow them along.
And really, this page, the grant funded, is just showing how we're leveraging our dollars. So it really is just showing that we're trying to do the best we can at being as efficient and leveraging wherever possible, looking for grants and everything else. So it sets us up for the coming years. We are spending that $17 million in this year. Leaves us $10.5 million. We still have permit reform that we're working on. Hopefully in Chapin's budget, there was making the project coordinator a full-time position, and that would allow me to continue doing more intensive planning so that this capital plan moves forward as smoothly as possible. And we just continue investing all the way around, and there will be challenges such as Rock Point Bridge. There's always going to be new challenges that come forward, and so we will have to be talking about those in the future as they come up.
I mean, our hope is that with all this investment, we'll start to deal with a backlog of projects that are in the field of unpredicted problems will narrow, and we'll start to be able to equalize and be less of a challenge for the public and for our funding resources.
So, we really looked at, we're a partner with every other department. And so we're helping with project management support. We're doing the security across all the municipal buildings. We are bringing asset management planning across all areas. And we're coordinating and collaborating as much as we possibly can. Integrating some preventive maintenance not only on our infrastructure but on our facilities as well, which will decrease our long-term costs as we implement that more. And all of that means that we have a better relationship, and as we set our strategy, people can buy into the strategy and feel that they're a part of it moving forward.
Great, thank you very much. And then Martha, questions?
Yep.
This might be for Rich more than you guys, but I want to at least ask, are we using municipal lease financing to do any of these projects to sort of approach it from that angle, Rich, financing as opposed to bond issuance costs?
So we do a little bit, and we're going to explore to find the balance. And the reason for that right now, our rates for leasing have been very attractive. The last deal we did was 2.36%, which is typically less than what I'm paying on bonds. My bonds have been a little less, a little more than 3% based on the current market conditions. So as we get ready for the next round of borrowing, we'll look at both. You're welcome.
So you mentioned that you have reached your max for trying to deal with sidewalk work and you're gonna hire consultants. Will they be using your materials or will they all get their own materials?
Well, for sidewalk work, there's two pieces of the puzzle. One, we have contractors who are building, renovating or replacing sidewalks, right? And then you have inspectors that inspect the work that are private consultants working for us. So there's two pieces of that puzzle.
So the
So-
reason I'm asking, Norm, is that a few years ago, we had, it was a few years ago, but we
Yeah.
had people outside of the city do some sidewalk work.
Yep.
And the materials we found were inferior and it pitted and piffed and it really was, I mean, it was, and so I just wanted to understand. You know,
They're using the same materials we use.
Okay.
They're doing the same process we're doing. We have inspectors in the field. They're called resident engineers that are consultants who are familiar with the work and do all the proper testing, make sure they're meeting their specifications and requirements. So I don't anticipate we're gonna have any of those types of problems because we've spent the money to have them and their work inspected and make sure that we're getting that quality.
Right, okay.
So-
This happened like after, obviously, like after, within a year, there was problems. So
Yeah,
that's why I was asking.
who knows, I mean, you have to point out the specifics, but I think that we're doing all the right things to protect and make sure we're getting that quality we deserve for the money we're spending.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other council? Okay, thank you very much for the
Thank you.
presentation, and we'll move on to
Perfect.
capital budgets and parks.
Thank you both.
We're about 30 minutes behind. Set the agenda.
But not only is she efficient in getting that out fast, but she's efficient in getting it up on board docs when I make a change. Thank you. It's a team, it's right. All right, so,
Yes?
you know me well. Thank you. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. Nina Safavi, our Parks Comprehensive Planner, has joined us, and then Diana Wood and John Adams-Colts from our planning team are also here, if anybody has questions as we go along. So I'm gonna do kind of some overview, a little bit of storytelling, so starting out with Penny for Parks. So Penny for Parks funds really help us stay on top of our capital needs in our parks. And tipping from fiscal year 13 to present, as of May 22nd, we tipped over into 101 projects have been completed as far as Penny for Parks, really making a difference in Burlington and allowing us to stay on top of our parks, our playgrounds. And some examples of things that we replace with that is, you've seen us at the courts. And so, for example, right now, we're out at Schmanska Park replacing those courts. So the courts were always very deteriorated, and the money for Penny for Parks has allowed us to really do a full replace of those. Playground equipment, picnic tables, grills, all those pieces we're able to keep on top of with the Penny for Parks program. There's money budgeted every year for Penny for Park requests and any emergent needs. And so emergent needs might be something that happens all of a sudden, something's happened in one of our parks. An example was this current year, the enhanced entrance at Smalley Park, because we had some erosion happening. And so with Penny for Parks funds and that money, we were able to get right to that and fix it up. A small little project that was a Penny for Parks request was horseshoe pits at Pomeroy Park. So if anybody was at Pomeroy for the police barbecue, you would have a chance to see those. So that's like just a little piece that somebody asked for, and we're able to make things like that happen. We're anticipating, I don't know if we've seen it yet, but we're anticipating an application at Schiffoletti Park. The girls softball program has been growing, and they're looking to have that field skinned. So we're anticipating that we'll see that application coming in, and then we can help the community out with that. And the way we get to choosing those, besides what comes in for the community, is our parks planning team does a 10-year plan that they continually update to make this decisions on what we're gonna be doing for a Penny for Parks program. All right, impact fees. I just wanna share a short little story, because I think that's we're more than numbers. This was shared with us the other day on a project that we had done using park impact fees.
It says, "Dear friends, if you want to put a smile on your face, stop by the new softball field at Smalley Park around 4 p.m. on an Edmonds Middle School game day. Next one, by the way, is June 1st. Or during any Waves game for that matter, and be sure to bring your camera. You will see a beautiful park being used by dozens, if not scores, of people. You'll probably also see EMS lose. Although they've somehow managed to win 2 games, they're made up almost entirely of 6th and 5th graders playing against mostly 8th graders twice their size. No matter, the girls are having a lot of fun, the coaches are upbeat and enthusiastic, and the neighbors are thrilled that the park is being used again by someone other than junkies. All in all, an incredible turnaround that should make all of you very proud. Sincerely, Tom Simon." So that was just a neat story about how impact fees being used in our park and really making a difference in the community. 2019, we have a classic park impact fee project. I think of classic in that Szymanska Walkway. So there's a large project that was built across the street. Is it Bayberry Commons, I believe is the correct name on that. And so we would have received park impact fees for that. We're improving the walkways there as part of 2019. Next up is our Greenbelt Capital. The big piece that we're going to be starting up right here is that Emerald Ash Borer Plan implementation. If you've been to any of the MPAs, we've been going around doing our spiel, and we'll really need to start doing some tree plantings. One of the ones that VJ's most excited about is in the neighborhoods where the trees are spaced farther enough apart that we can start putting a tree in between so that tree will have time to grow before we end up maybe having to take many of those trees down in our community. So that's a big one. That's an expense coming up that way. We are looking to try to get to that 50% tree canopy. That's our goal for Burlington. And so that just takes very intentional planting to get that way. That's, again, Greenbelt Capital. Next one is our Open Space Conservation Legacy Fund. So the focus of that is acquisition. 70% of the funds have to be spent on acquisition. But I also want to touch on the fact that we also have incredible volunteer opportunities that we're able to do as far as our staffing around our conservation program. We planted 850 trees with Audubon. I think you might have seen that recently in Facebook and social media. So we had 120 volunteers that came through that. Some of them are businesses, many are individuals. They're able to get co-op credit for some of these projects. And we finished the last 150 of them off with our staff. So not only do we get businesses that reach out to us wanting to volunteer projects, but we were able to, as a staff, go in there and finish those last 150 trees as part of our full staff meeting in May. And I have to say my work pants came on. They're my dress work pants. I really should not have worn dress work pants on a day that you're doing a project like that. Let's just say they may become work pants now. And for Earth Day on April 22nd, Heady, Vermont, is it, how do you pronounce it, or Heady, Vermont, Heady, Vermont, and Fall Raven each brought 20 volunteers for a tree relocation project at 311 North Ave. So again, businesses that are looking to make a difference in the community, they're looking for a project that helps their staff bond with our conservation program and our support through the Conservation Legacy Fund. We're able to do projects like that. So Bike Path Maintenance and Improvement Fund has all the words up there for what we're doing, but I want to talk about an upcoming pilot that we're doing with Local Motion that I am super excited about. I think all of you know that I love to go anywhere on a bicycle. We're borrowing for 2 weeks a Fat Tire electric assist bicycle with a trailer to try to replace some of the vehicle trips on our bike path. So with our bike path maintenance person, when they're doing the sweeps of the path, they're out there with a vehicle. We'll be getting that electric assist bike with the trailer to be doing that. And Paul, who's our main bike path person, is very excited about testing that out. So Matt's smiling. I was smiling. I have to say I was really thrilled that when I sent that email that there was no resistance. It was just excitement about trying this out. And Local Motion was right there ready to help us out. Special project. This is our capital bond money that Martha and Chapin and Norm, I just can't, I mean, actually all of those, I couldn't imagine not being in the same building with these guys. That's been the power of sharing a building with Parks and Public Works. Martha's been so supportive. I'm not sure how many times I've asked her questions where I just walk down the hall, I peek around the corner and she's there, and she's never once rolled her eyes or sighed as I asked her one more question about capital projects. And Norm the same, and Chapin very supportive with us using their staff. So thanks for Public Works for helping us out with that. So our main piece with the special projects is obviously the bike path. And we're almost done with section, is it called it phase two? Phase two. So we're almost done there with a big, very expensive part left that we'll be working on late fall through into early spring, and that's the overpass at North Beach. But otherwise, they're just buttoning things up, fixing the pieces, and it's beautiful. I get to commune on it every day, and there's just so many people that are out using it. So I think that's obviously one our community is very proud of. And we'll be moving out to the south end, starting up while the design work is happening now through the summer. Then we'll be going out to bid and then going under construction, heading out by Oak Ledge next spring. And then our final one there is TIF and donations. We're working on trying to close out our TIF money for Waterfront Park. That's with the soil work out there and electrical work. Obviously, with most projects, they come in really high for what you want to get done, and then you value engineer it down to the money that you have available. So we are working to get that wrapped up because that TIF money needs to get spent. We've got donations for the pause places on the Greenway, also for Cambion Rise all the way down to the Greenway path, and then working with the group at the Oak Ledge Universal Playground. So that's another, I say tentative donation because they're still working on it. So that's pretty much wraps us up for Capital. If anybody has any questions.
Thank you. Question about the Greenbelt Capital.
Yes.
Actually, two questions about that. How are areas decided on for where to invest that money? I know that there was a particular focus on the downtown core.
Yep.
You noted in your doc.
Mm-hmm.
Where else? How else?
I know that one of the areas that VJ's, they're looking, part of it's the tree canopy. Everything is put into GIS. Is it Tree, what is the name? TreeWorks is the name of the program that we use, and it allows us to see where our trees are. And I know VJ's talked about the New North End. It's one of the areas that we want to try to increase the tree canopy out there. So it's using GIS to see where our challenges are. And then also some of it's where if we've had some damage, like if trees have, come down, and we need to replace them in neighborhoods, we're looking at that. And the tree program also lets us know on the age of the trees, what the condition of the trees are, so the staff can go through and look to see, which trees are in the, I feel funny saying the worst shape, but because obviously they're not hazardous. If they're hazardous, we're taking them down. But then we can start replacing so that we have varied ages of trees along streets.
Okay, what was the name of that tool?
TreeWorks.
And second, small question, the Emerald Ash Bowl Fund. I don't know what that is.
Okay,
Could
so.
you maybe share a little bit, or maybe share the plan?
Yep, we can definitely share the plan with you. And then, so it's basically the emerald ash borer is a bug, and it's hitting all the ash trees. And so the ash trees will eventually all die, or you can infuse them with a herbicide every 2 years to keep them alive. And so that emerald ash borer is looking at, we have, I think it's 1,200 ash trees in the city. And so we're having to do a really very systematic approach to what we're gonna do with those trees, because they.
I'd love to see that, if you could somehow.
Yep, we sure can.
You've made a lot of investments in both Roosevelt and Pomeroy parks. Are there any further planned investments?
At those same parks?
Yeah.
So Roosevelt, and what was the other one you noted?
Pomeroy.
No. Not for 19.
Okay. Is there any, we had heard some interest about doing, like, having some gardening around the sign and that kind of stuff. How would a resident who had an interest in starting a project like that work with parks, like, for instance, with the horseshoe pits? Like, how would a resident continue to access those kind of parks?
Okay, so on our website, Max, is a form, it's a Penny for Parks request form, and it's right down at the bottom is that form. If you don't find it, just email me and I'll get it to you, and that's where they just fill that out, and then it comes to, when they fill it out, who is it?
To Diana.
So it goes to Diana. Yep. And then, and we take, we enjoy getting them because, obviously we think we've got a good idea of what has to happen, but it's nice getting the community's ideas because there's things that we don't always think about.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, seeing no other counselors, we will thank you very much for the presentation. And
Great, thank you.
move on to the traffic.
Thanks for letting me control.
Anytime.
Thanks, Cindy.
Oh, the cool.
I don't have anything here.
Sir, could you pop that in? All right, while Rich is pulling that up, thank you all very much. Chapin Spencer, Director of Public Works.
Patrick Mulligan, Assistant Director.
And we have Derek Wrightson in the back here, who is the Special Projects Manager for BBA, involved in the parking partnership with us. So we are going to make this fast. Let's cut straight to the point. No rate increases are needed to make this budget work, and we have a balanced budget. All right? Megan might be the smooth operator, but
this one here. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. All right. So we'll pull it up. There's 4 divisions in Public Works. One of the divisions is parking and traffic, as you know, here. And so why don't you talk about our accomplishments for FY18?
Sure. Okay. First of all, as Chapin already mentioned, we have projecting a positive net income for the 4th straight year, which is really good considering all the construction work and everything, all the improvements we've been handling within our garages. We reduced enforcement hours, as council knows, back in December, utilizing data-driven decisions. So, as you know, we reduced downtown parking enforcement hours from 8 in the outer sections from 8 to 6 to 9 to 6, and within the core to 9 to 6, 9 to 9 from 8 to 10, which has been received, I think, very positively by our users. We're establishing reduced seasonal rates. We accomplished this partly in our last DPW commission meeting. Our Lake Street section of Lake Street is currently $1 an hour. And then Lake Street Extension, where I have 88 spaces plus 6 handicap, we'll have kiosks installed. That'll be $1 an hour, but between November and April, during the off-season, it'll be reduced to 40 cents an hour to encourage longer-term use of these spaces as well. We completed the phase 2 of the $9 million college garage repairs in College Street Garage. Lowered pay by cell service rates. That's a renegotiated fee with Park Mobile. At one time, it was a 30 cents fee initially, and then an additional 30 cents to re-up, to extend. We got a 35, yep. We got rid of the 35 extension fee, and then we were able to convince Park Mobile to offer that same deal to Champlain College, which has Park Mobile, UVM, which has Park Mobile, and Winooski just signed their deal with Park Mobile, and they rode on our deal. So when you use Park Mobile in these areas other than the city, you're going to be charged the same rates, which is nice. It's convenience. We procured upgraded revenue control system. We just had our first direct operations meeting with them the other day with Parking Soft. We're expecting our system to start being installed after Labor Day of this year. We're investing in enhanced communications, did study parks coordination through BBA, through Derek. We're continuing our downtown counts on Thursdays, Saturdays, and every quarter on a Sunday. We're also counting not only our public on-street and off-street spaces, but our private off-street spaces as well, so we get a good count of what a space is available. And we're installing upgraded signals at Battery Maple. That's ongoing right now. The sidewalks have been put in place. The upgraded ADA acceptable sidewalks are now in place on all 4 corners. Now we're just going to do the light system. And then we're going to go, after that, our plan is to go to Colchester.
Colchester Ave.
Colchester Ave.
I can touch on this one,
Yep.
which we'll get to in the next slide. We've taken one great budget and turned it into 2 budgets. And we'll talk about that in the next slide. And we're also proposing to pay down some of our existing garage capital debt by using some of our fund balance, which will reduce our operating expenses. Next. So we used to have a traffic fund. Based on guidance from the city attorney and the charter change from 2017, we needed to split into 2 funds. One, as you'll see, is the existing traffic fund, which ordinance language says is for controlling and regulating traffic. but we have a new fund called the Parking Facilities Fund, which is municipal lots and garages. You'll see the activities that are in each fund next. So we have a number of goals. I won't read through them all. They're building off of FY18 successes. Let's see, I think you all have seen a number of these. I guess I'll jump down to support bike share operation. You've seen the Green Ride program around town. We are supporting that operation with a contribution from the traffic fund as part of controlling and regulating traffic. So we are a sponsor of that operation. In addition, down towards the bottom, another interesting public-private partnership. We will be bringing to you an agreement to manage the 53 public spaces in the Eagles Landing project at 194 St. Paul Street, so that we can ensure consistent signage, consistent costs, consistent pay on foot stations, and really have it seem as one united parking system downtown next. All right, so we have a number of goals and to improve our operations. The new park system in the garages will really enable us to take our attendants and harness their talents as ambassadors. They will no longer be limited to the booth and can circulate for visibility, for safety, for janitorial work, and deliver a better service to our customer. We'll be able to provide online options for obtaining our monthly passes. That is a major revenue component of our College Street and Lakeview garage, and managing hundreds, close to 1,000 monthly leases can be very cumbersome. So this will help us and help the customer. So if you can just go back just to finish the bottom there. There are a number of pieces for the downtown parking plan. The validation program that we want to offer for downtown businesses. The new park system will allow overnight garage leases. And we'll have dynamic signage outside the garages. Thanks. So getting to the numbers, now we've split a $5 million program into a surprisingly $2.5 million program on each side. So for the traffic fund, this is mostly funded by the on-street meters and is spent supporting signs and lines, signals, and the crossing guard program. Has a net income of $61,000. For the Parking Facilities Fund, $2.6 million revenue, and the expenses are split between the Marketplace Garage, College and Lakeview Garage, and parking lots. This is a new fund that was set up, as we discussed, and we're proposing, in order to make the budget balance, is to use half of our $4 million fund balance to reduce our annual debt payments for the garage capital work, which would still leave us with 140 days of cash on hand. Patrick started out by saying we've had 4 positive years of net income in this program, which allows us to pay down some of our debt and reduce our annual payments for debt service. Next. So while we split one budget into 2, we mashed them together for you here to see what it looks like just as a comparison. So if you were to mash the 2 budgets together this year for FY19, you would notice that our revenues are proposed to go up 5% and our expenses up 1.6. You will see on the net, on the bottom line, the last 4 years, as we've been trending from a highly deficit budget towards a much more positive budget next. It's important to note, while the budget is not dependent on any rate increases, we are constantly evaluating our systems and our rates and enforcement based on data. You saw that we reduced rates in the core and outside the core based on data this last year, and that we just implemented a lower rate on the waterfront for the winter. But we are constantly going to use the data to inform policy changes going forward. Next. All right, so key drivers for our fund. We're projecting really similar utilization rates. That said, we are looking to do more traffic impact work, more signal upgrades, and that comes from impact fees. We're looking for more parking revenue from our partnership with the Champlain College Eagles Landing project. We're paying for the bike share support and continuing our BBA support next. So that's on the traffic fund. On the parking facilities fund, again, projecting similar utilization to our current year. We are looking to add those kiosks at Lake Street Extension. we are seeing a reduction in the DID proceeds because of the mall redevelopment. So for the next year or two, we will not have as much of the special assessment revenue that comes to support 2-hour free. Next. All right, so for future years, there may need to be a discussion FY20, depending on how well the park system works for enhancing our revenue. We may need to discuss rate changes in 2020. That is still TBD. We do have all the operational improvements we'll continue to roll out with the park system. We need to do about $2 million of garage repairs to Marketplace Garage. It was built in '76, but we are waiting for the City Place Burlington garage to open before doing most of the repairs there. Next. Questions?
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Fisher.
So two questions. One is, and thank you for this was a good presentation. I think I was missing one page.
Yes. I added in the page where I mashed everything together because some people were asking, what is the kind of year-over-year comparison?
Anyway, that would be interesting to have access. Is that online?
We'll share. Yeah, we'll upload the updated presentation.
Great. So my question has to do with, and I believe since you addressed everything, that I can conclude that you are not considering or implementing any change in charging for parking in metered lots on Sundays.
At this point, the budget does not depend on it. We're still collecting data. We're going to look at the data, but anything that we do in this realm, we are required to notify you as the council.
But I just wanted to understand that.
There is no firm plan at this
Okay,
point.
That's one. The second question is, when you're talking about parking facilities fund budget, you talked about paying down the garage capital debt by using $2 million of the fund balance. What fund balance? Where is that? I haven't looked at this enough
Yes.
to know.
Sure, that's fine. Through our management of the garages and the on-street system, we have been able to turn a traffic fund, which was on the edge of not being able to pay its bills, to having a $4 million fund balance.
So that's what.
So we're proposing to pay down half of that to reduce our ongoing borrowing.
I knew you had a fund balance. I didn't realize it was $4 million. If it was here,
Yeah.
I missed that. But, okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Just building on the second question, so what was is that more than projected? I mean, I assume that when we increased the rates, that was part of a larger financial plan.
It was, and we each year have beat budget significantly. And that has enabled us, as you saw in the projections year over year, we started with negative net projections moving towards positive, but each of the last 4 years, we've actually delivered positive end results. And that has built this $4 million fund balance over the last 4 years.
So there'll be $2 million less borrowing than you would have, than would otherwise take place.
We have existing debt out for the garage capital work we've done. About $4.2 million is currently borrowed, and we are transferring that line of credit into a termed note. And we want to make sure that we're not paying $4.2 million out on a term note if we can pay down half of that now with our fund balance and be able to have a smaller note into the future.
So we're paying down debt or we're refinancing?
We're paying down debt. Technically, it's not considered debt. It's a line of credit construction loan that's outstanding that we have the ability to pay down that LOC prior to it actually being termed out long-term as debt.
I know we need to continue to invest significantly in the garages.
That's correct. But Marketplace, being that we're 18 to 24 months out, it doesn't make sense in my mind to be holding a fat fund balance and paying.
So we should expect borrowing in 2 years?
It is possible, though, with our park system and our management, we're continuing to deliver higher revenue every year without rate changes. So we're seeing with this park system, we're going to have nighttime leases in the garages. We've never had that before. we may be able to continue to trend that revenue positive.
But in other places, we talked earlier about why you wouldn't want to necessarily do pay-as-you-go to finance capital. So, why is that?
This budget, to be completely candid, this budget is coming together late, and I've had less review of this budget than some of the others, and I have some similar questions as possible as we come back for a final approval on this, that we may shift this a little bit and,
Yeah. Mhm. Sure.
Yes, yes.
So, one of the things about the nighttime pieces, will there be an affordability component of this, or some sliding scale or anything like that for people? I mean, there are a lot of people who don't have access to parking in the winter time.
Right.
And they can get that for free if they get in for a certain time. Is that gonna continue, and how does this lease all, I mean, is there more to this story that I should know about?
It's still a work in progress. Given that the garages are so underutilized at night, our goal is to have it be a discounted product. It is certainly not the same rates that we would imagine during the day.
Good. I've heard a lot from downtown, people who live around downtown, that they would love to be able to.
Exactly.
It's an affordable off-peak rate.
Yes.
It's basically what it would be.
Yes.
Yep.
We have this
bunch
resource.
of interesting policy questions that flow from this, and how it interacts with our zoning policies. It has the potential, I think, to be another kind of force for affordable housing. If we have latent, unused nighttime spaces that can be, the traffic fund can make some money and invest it properly, but it also avoids the need to spend millions and millions on building new parking spaces. It may make it possible for more downtown housing, residential housing to be built.
Great. Can Board of Finance see that, even though we don't have necessarily jurisdiction?
Absolutely. I think on the June 4th, I envision the June 4th meeting, let me make sure I understand what you want to see, but the June 4th meeting, any changes as a result of the input we've gotten over the course of these meetings, or things that have emerged, we will explicitly present on June 4th, including if there is changes here. But what specifically do you want to see?
Something that's going to happen over the course of the year, just as the program comes together, I think Board of Finance.
I see. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Thank you very much, Chapin and Patrick.
Thank you.
And we will invite our friends from the group. This will be Neil. We're looking for you. We're talking about Seattle.
No, I mean, you're completely.
Yeah, we can
We
clear all
do.
the seats if you guys want.
Please do.
What do you want?
How many? No, we're good.
That's
Just,
okay.
no,
It's all good.
no, sit. No, okay. Darren and James can join me here? Yeah, okay. Oh, no, sorry. Hey, we're over here. Come here.
Welcome, Neil.
Here, one chair over here.
I know you're a big, important department, we have to give you 15 minutes.
We will do what we can to, to keep within that window. First, I want to thank you for having me in today, and excited to present the budget. I am joined by Darren Springer, our COO, Manager of Strategy and Innovation, Jim Reardon, who's our Director of Finance, and James Gibbons, our Director of Power Supply. And today we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on at Burlington Electric, a little bit about the power markets and some of the challenges we're seeing. We think importantly, it is important to start that although this is a challenging year for us, we are very pleased to report that we'll be able to go into our 10th year without a rate increase. I would argue that when you look at the entirety of all of the work we're doing at Burlington Electric, all the innovative programs, all the efficiency efforts, all the capital spending that we're doing, I'd be hard pressed to name another utility that's been able to do so much without adjusting rates. It's an amazing story, and it's due to the work that our team has put into it year over year. And that means everybody from the men and women who work at McNeil on the front lines and the plants to doing distribution, to our teams that do the finance and power supply. It's really a great story for Burlington and something we're really proud of. We don't think, and I'm going to talk about this more, that we will be able to get to an 11th year. At this point, it is unlikely given a lot of the trends that I'm going to get into, but we're obviously going to work at it. It's important for us. Right in our mission is to keep our rates low and stable, have affordable electricity for our customers, which we believe we've done. So there's some moving pieces here we'll talk about. On the income side, we're seeing continued degradation in the rec market. We're actually seeing our kilowatt hour sales drop, which might come back up. We'll talk a little bit about that, and some weak energy prices overall. On the expense side, we've done, I think, really all we can, short of some really draconian methods to keep our controllable costs down. But we are seeing pressure on things that we don't control, transmission costs, and also some normal labor costs through the contract and other things. But despite all these challenges, we are making investments that we think will continue to make BED one of the preeminent municipal utilities, and certainly in the state, but I think in the country. We talk a little bit about the rec revenue. The rec revenue is what has allowed us on the revenue side to have some flexibility over recent years. A few years ago, you can see our rec revenue peaked at over $12 million annually. That's money that we put right back in to keeping our rates low. Over just the last couple of years, we've seen that slide to just above $8 million. And that $4 million drop, that's a big chunk of change. We continue to see the rec market being soft, although stabilized. But we are watching that closely. That's something that we assume that it's going to be stable this year. But if it does continue to dip, that's something that could change the equation in future years. One thing that's important to note with RECs, we have instituted with the help of our electric commission, a forward selling policy for RECs. So one of the reasons we're not seeing a bigger drop here, because the REC prices themselves have dropped quite a bit, is that we've been forward selling the RECs so that we are selling part of our portfolio for today for future years, so fiscal 2021 and the out years. That's allowed us to not feel the full drop of the rec market, which was, say, at $50 a couple years ago, down to this year trading at less than $10. So those forward sales, which James Gibbons and his team have done, have really helped us stabilize that. We also seen kilowatt hour sales very soft. I mean, this is sort of a good news story. You know, we are always working to reduce the amount of electricity that we're selling. We have, historically, we sell less electricity today than we did in 1990 because of our efficiency efforts. But in the near term, it does have an impact on our budgets. We were the green sort of dots on top were where we were forecasting, and the bottom is the reforecast, and you can see it's quite a bit lower. That's direct kilowatt hour sales to our customers. That affects our revenue, and that's something that we're looking to deal with that in the coming years. We have a couple of big customers, including one big one here in the downtown that's not taking a lot of electricity. When that comes back online, that'll help a little bit, but it's still, we're not projecting it to be a big jump in the future. It's going to be a little bit lower. We're also dealing with some energy markets that are volatile. In the wintertime, we have excess energy that we sell back into the market from McNeil because of the way our power supply works. We want those energy prices in the winter to be high. We've counted on, we've had high prices. Historically, that yellow dot is the 5-year average, but you can see over the last few years we've had very low energy prices, so we're not able to sell that. That also impacts our revenue. And you can see, I just want to note in this, the 5-year average is the yellow dot. We've budgeted conservatively in this, so we're budgeting below the 5-year average because we want to make sure we're not being too rosy. Generally, we tend to use modest assumptions rather than rosy. We don't use rosy ones because we want to make sure that we are doing it conservatively. On the expense side, On the expense side, we're seeing transmission costs that have doubled since, almost doubled. They will more than double since our last rate increase. Again, totally uncontrollable from our perspective. This has to do with what's being done all across New England and the costs that are just coming back to us to be part of the to be part of the grid. It's important that we are. There are some things we can do to control it, but we can't bend the curve, wildly bend the curve of this rising cost. That's cost that we just have to find the money for. For the controllable costs, things we can control, we have a real good success story. In the year prior to our strategic transformation and in the 10 years prior to our strategic transformation efforts, the budgets grew annually at 5.8% during the periods of fiscal 7 to fiscal 16. After our strategic transformation efforts, which include our voluntary buyout, we have seen those controllable costs basically flatline. We are just barely above our fiscal 16 controllable cost number for fiscal 19. When you couple this story with our investments in renewable energy and our power supply, the ingenuity around how we've done power supply, this has really held off a rate increase for at least 3 years. But we can't stretch that forever. So we've been able to do well, but this is a good story, but it's not gonna hold us forever. So getting into the budget, we look at our budget from an income statement perspective. I should mention that our Electric Commission has reviewed this budget in detail and have approved it and asked for your approval unanimously. And we do make some assumptions in here. Obviously, I mentioned before, we are budgeting for stable rec and energy prices versus our forecast. We don't think they're going to swing wildly. We have budgeted them modestly. Same thing with the sales to customers. If we were to see a big customer drop off, then that could impact it. But we have a lot of institutional customers with the hospital and UVM, so we don't see a lot of those wild swings. A few other things that are important, we are asking for an accounting order for a big turbine overhaul that we do at McNeil. This happens about every 7 years. We've received these accounting orders in the past. This will allow us to amortize that cost over a 7 or 8 year period, so it doesn't hit us all at once. Smooths out the rates. It smooths out our cost overall. We are going to be coming back to the Board of Finance to ask for approval to sell our share of the Highgate Converter Station. I won't get into this in a lot of detail here, but the really quick version is that there's a piece of equipment that sits up at the Canadian border that we really don't use for our purposes. We do get some revenue off of it, but we've had an offer to buy it for a premium, and we are proposing to sell it. We'll come back and talk to you more about that when we have more time, but that is also embedded into this budget. It's a piece of equipment that you can't touch, feel, see, and it doesn't really provide any real meaningful value other than the revenue value, which we'll get some return on it with this share of our sale of our share of it. We own about 7%. Talk more about that later. Happy to answer any questions tonight. We've also assumed a new EV charging rate, which we think is a really exciting change. We're going to come back and propose that we file a EV charging rate that will allow for almost 40% less cost of electricity for charging your EV overnight. We don't think it does much of a hit on our revenue, but it does provide a really important incentive to people who want to buy an EV and working with them, charge it overnight when we have a lot of capacity. Those are things that we've put in our budget. So despite these cost pressures, we have got a great budget this year. You'll see on the next slide that we have a very robust capital plan. It's the most robust one that we've done, certainly in the last 10 years. And that includes a big slug of money for a major IT upgrade. We have an IT system that was born in the 90s and is really outdated, and it's getting to I would say it's on life support. So we've been over the last year working on an IT, what we call IT Forward, to get ready for this major IT upgrade. We're budgeting for the first phase of it in fiscal 19. We think it's really important to provide a platform for all the future innovation and especially the customer component of what we do in the future. We've also budgeted for a $2.4 million investment in Velco equity. I think we've talked about this before, but this is a really great investment for us. We're able to invest in Velco, which is the state's transmission system. We get a 12.5% return on this equity. We actually get more. Last year, we started collecting more in Velco dividend income than we pay in interest on our outstanding loans. So any chance we can to invest in Velco equity, we make an investment. We do that, and then this budget accounts for that. We've also continued to make strong investments in employee safety training and education. This has been consistent over the last few years, something that all of our employees, we ask our employees regularly what they look for, what they want, and they've said, we want training and education by an overwhelming margin. And we've put in this budget $230,000 for training and education, and have somebody that works on this to make sure every employee has a individual training education plan to allow them to grow in their career and be more value to Burlington Electric and our customers. Also, we built in tons of energy innovation. Our efficiency program is going strong. That's fully supported. District Energy is supporting part of this. We're looking at a half a megawatt battery. Actually, it's bigger than half a megawatt. How big is it, James, the battery at the airport?
The proposed one is just shy of a megawatt. Of discharge capability with a 4-hour discharge length.
At the airport. So it'll combine with our half a megawatt solar at the airport with a battery to provide them better reliability, but also to allow us to use it to peak shave, so it brings down some of our other costs. We budgeted for a net zero roadmap to make sure that we are seeing how the path that we get to being a net zero energy city in Burlington. I mentioned the EV charging rate. We still have money in here for our electric vehicle incentives, for our e-bikes, which are absolutely taking off. We're talking with Megan Moyer. She's walking out. She's doing an e-bike lending program for her and her daughter, trying to figure out how she's going to buy an e-bike. Within the first week of that program, we announced just a few weeks ago with the mayor. Within the first week, we had 15 people that have filed for e-bike rebates, and I think that number has been probably growing. We're going to do our Solar Shopper 2.0, a community solar program focused on how we can get solar to, especially to renters who don't have the opportunity to take the advantage of solar because they don't own a building. And finally, I wanted to mention that we are proposing to do a employee net zero benefit. One thing that we think is important is that our employees are personally committed to being net zero in their own lives. And we're proposing to provide them with an opportunity to get a rebate on energy innovations that they do in their own life. So if they buy an EV, if they put solar on their house, if they do weatherization, if they buy an e-bike, providing them a benefit to be able to make that more affordable. We think this is important because we want everybody really bought into what we do. Capital spending, I mentioned before, but we have a $7.6 million capital spending. This is net of any customer contribution and net of any money we're putting toward Velco. You can see that we have steadily tracked higher on our capital spend. We think this is important. So we don't want to artificially hold rates down by starving our capital program. That is a bad bargain. And so we are continuing to make big investments in our infrastructure to keep that going. Oh, yeah, and this also assumes that we get a continued $3 million portion of the city's general obligation bonds. We've been doing that the last few years. Our commission recommended, and they asked for the council's approval for moving that forward. So I want to just mention, that's kind of fiscal 19 in a nutshell. I want to mention fiscal 20 because I think it's important. We are, given the market challenges that I kind of laid out, I do think it is likely for us to see a rate adjustment next year. It's not certain because there's a lot of moving pieces in the market. If we get a colder winter or if we get a positive movement in the rec market, this could change. But I kind of want to say before we wrap this up that we've had 10 years of it. It's been great, but we will need to do something if we want to remain fiscally prudent. One thing that we look at is, of course, we look at all of our Moody's metrics regularly. We do well on 2 of the 3 metrics. These don't comprise the whole rate. They comprise, each of them is about 10% of the overall Moody's rate. 2 of the 3 we do extremely well. Cash on hand, which we've managed to keep our cash reserves in a good spot. Our debt service coverage ratio is above the benchmark, but we are lower than we need to be on adjusted debt service coverage ratio. This is one that looks at the available revenue to cover our debt coverage. We have kind of squeezed what we can out of the expense side of things. This is sort of fundamentally a revenue problem, and it's most likely that we are going to have to make some adjustments to revenue or see a bump in some of our other revenues to materially move this back up above our benchmark rating. Like I said, this is one of many things that Moody's would look at, but I do flag it because we look at it every month and the things that we do. And I wanted to say that is one of the things that we'll likely, if we want to move that back above 1.5, we'll likely need a rate adjustment to be able to do that. That shouldn't be, I would say that shouldn't be the only reason that you want to do a rate adjustment, because there are like a lot of factors in play, but it is one thing that we like to flag every year where we are with those metrics. Finally, I won't go through this slide, but I added it. We added it just so we can see all the things we're doing. Now we're having a great year in fiscal 18. We want to continue that great year in fiscal 19. We believe this budget does that without a rate increase for our customers, while maintaining a strong fiscal discipline, strong financial metrics, but still advancing toward our goal of being a net zero energy city. I know I went over, but there's a lot in there.
Can I just want to mention?
Yeah, one thing.
And I might need Rich's help with this, is there's a resolution that would allow us in fiscal year 2019, to extend our line of credit when it expires May of 2019. Not that we've used it, but it's good to have.
Any questions from council? It's not a question, but I must admit that since you have presented the budget, it's made strong electric budget much more understandable, and focused on really the important takeaways. So I want to compliment you and doing that, and recognizing that I'm not anyone in the industry, but I do need to understand it and make sure that we're going in the right direction and trying to protect the ratepayers. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I give the credit to a great team at BED, and just does an outstanding job.
Seeing no other questions? Thank you, Jill.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we're at like 7:20. We've got then 4 counselors.
And then there were 3.
About to lose group. And so we have mayor's office, regional programs, health, retirement, workers' comp. Are you okay, and is there new information about mayor's office?
We did just post this afternoon.
I have a presentation, I'm sorry.
So this is like a return, we wanted just a little more information about the positions in the mayor's office and who does what.
Oh, this is that? Oh, I'm sorry.
This is that.
I thought this was health insurance. I'm
No.
looking at you like, this is odd.
We're on item 9 now.
So, yes, we did, so we tried to respond to the request from last week, and just on these slides here, the first is just the org chart, which is a straightforward chart, of course, and then we have a short write-up on each of the 3 positions. Of course, in each case, there's a lengthy job description for each of these positions, but we tried to kind of pull out the highlights and the ones that have particular that I thought would be of interest to the council, and that may not be fully transparent to the council or certain the public, how much Katie and Jordan and Liz do to support the efforts of city departments, all of which you've been hearing from. So I know this, I'm happy to go through these slides or pause here so you can review them. We apologize we weren't able to get them out until today, but what would be helpful? Having a walk through.
I think for me, I think, this is exactly what I was looking for, to understand what each, and I haven't read this, but trying to understand, we look at every department, when we look at their positions, you have a vacancy now, potentially, do you or don't you? With Brian in IT.
Nope, we have named Jordan to fill the.
I know, but then who's doing Jordan's position?
Okay, so sorry. Yes, the front desk position, the assistant, the administrative coordinator. Jordan left the city, of course, way back last October, and we filled that temporarily with a temporary. So we've been operating at full strength with Liz Amler working in that position, and we. Thought it made sense for a variety of reasons to keep that a temporary position until it was clear that that I would still be in this position, and now we are moving forward and have advertised that position and started interviewing for it and are planning on filling that permanently.
So my point is, Mr. Mayor, I thought with the movement, there was a vacancy and in your department, a position that was there but was unfilled, and so I thought that like every other department, we would look at what each person does and make sure that that position was still needed. So that's really my focus. There's no secret about this. I'm just trying to figure out who does what, and is the structure which we enhanced, is that structure still the one that we need for the mayor's office? So that's really where I'm coming from, and why I wanted the org chart is I wanted to look at how it worked. And then I wanted to understand, just in bullets, just as you've done, not the whole job description, but just the key points of what people do to understand that. So to better understand your organization, because I thought that when you made the presentation, I felt that was missing somewhat for me.
Yes.
Okay. Can we go back to the previous slide? The communication from project coordinator. Can I just ask you a question about? Okay. So in terms of, there's two parts of it. There's like a coordinating special projects, where you're going to work with the department heads to kind of do something for them. Okay. And then there's the communication. Would you say it's roughly 50-50, or with a sense of the division of time there?
Yeah, it's a fair question, an interesting question. I would say when we created this position, and tracing back the various evolutions, if you recall, I think we've had basically stable structure since Mike Canerick became the chief of staff, and we set up this position. Well, actually, I guess we probably. Sorry, that's not accurate. But what is accurate about that is, at that point, Mike, the chief of staff, handled almost all the media communications. Then we had a project person that this was originally a project position. As things have evolved over time, we found that very unworkable, frankly, to have the chief of staff also be the media person, because the nature of the media work is that it is unpredictable, that we can have 10 media inquiries in a day, all of which we feel it's our job to respond to promptly and quickly, or we can have days where we don't get any, of course. We have many days where you get just a few. It was difficult for the chief of staff to push forward sort of sustained initiatives while also him being responsible for the media stuff. So when Brian Lowe became chief of staff, we really made an effort to shift that, and this position became much more of a media-focused position. Brian Lowe took on much more of the project responsibilities, and that has worked better from my perspective.
Okay. So,
and so I would say, I didn't quite answer your question. I would say that this is probably 80 to 90% communications related as opposed to project related at this point. it almost was a surprise to me in reviewing this for you that we still call this a projects coordinator, and that we, it's not all media, but there's a lot of communication activity, as is represented here, that is really the bulk of Katie's time.
I see, okay. I think that with the communications, it's important that we're sharing information, right? Not only the good news, but sometimes the less good news. Sometimes I feel it's a little bit biased towards like the better news that is happening, for instance, things that are happening that may not be so good, but still whatever on the, it's a public information function, right? It's not necessarily a PR function, it's a public information function. So I would just ask that we kind of stay aware about, the kinds of information that we share. Like when the sewage went into the lake, I didn't see it, but I didn't see any communication.
Oh, that's actually, I think that's an interesting one to raise. So I was working with the Department of Public Works to put out some information about that. So it didn't come from the mayor's office, but they worked on an update for their website, which they found is most effective to share through social media. That tends to reach the public and the media more quickly. So they then use that language to reach the public. Mm-hmm.
When you must get a lot of calls just from the public, they have a problem, some kind of problem with the city services center, right? Because it doesn't matter what the call numbers is. So what happens with those? I mean, do any of those problems get solved by the mayor's office staff, or is it all sent to someone else, or how does that work, that function?
Certainly.
Thought a lot about
We kind of do it on a case-by-case basis. It depends on what the inquiry is. Some complaints we can resolve quickly in the mayor's office. Some need to be referred to another department. And we have having been recently in the administrative coordinator role, I have a pretty good understanding of which person in each department might resolve each type of question or complaint.
Right.
So I have a pretty good understanding about which person might be able to answer which question. However, I do think that there is room within the city for more streamlined customer service communications, and that's something that we've been thinking about in the mayor's office. But when someone does call the mayor's office, the administrative coordinator role usually picks up the phone. I pick up the phone sometimes, and I have been working with Liz to make sure that things get followed up on.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Just a real quick.
I have Tracy next, but the mayor.
Sorry, just a quick additional point on that. One of the things I mentioned briefly the other day, and we are going to propose to you as one of the options for some of the capital or the unassigned fund balance spending is this study to look at the way in which customer service, constituent services are performed. And some of that came out of a sense that we do receive a lot of that in the mayor's office, and we have a sense that we do our best, and we have a sense that maybe there could be some improvement there as collectively as a city. Also, as we are considering hiring for this next position, Jordan has made the observation that it can be. Whereas we have approached this position as being someone who is an entry-level person in the past, we're going to be weighing and considering this whether someone with more experience, because of that, it can be a difficult role to thrust someone who is in their first professional job into handling some of these difficult constituent request responses. So we're considering that as we're out there hiring again, having learned that over the last 6 years, if you will. So.
I think that would probably be a good idea. Yeah, Councilor.
So that media inquiry piece is helpful context to understand. One of the things that I've complained about on the council floor and other times has been just the timely flow of information and release of information. I know it's not completely reliant on the mayor's office as an issue. Oftentimes relevant information that's needed for the council comes from departments specifically. But just wanting to see information, that having the resources needed to facilitate that information flow to the council such that we have enough time to digest it, especially if it's a complex thing, like for instance, the UVM capital agreement, which, while I think there was a lot of good stuff in there, I just felt like I didn't have the time necessary, and so I felt like I had a responsibility not to support something that I didn't have a chance to vet. So I don't know if, I don't know how that's necessarily represented in this, but given some information sharing, I know that this has been a frustration on some issues, and just wanting to see that better dealt with, such that we have, at least a couple days or even weeks to deal with information that's particularly weighty or challenging.
Yes, point taken, Councilor Tracy. I think we have acknowledged that what happened with the UVM agreement was driven, was not the timing we would hope to achieve and work to achieve. We felt, it was a function of difficult negotiations and unmovable deadlines with the bond vote, and I hope that I want to believe that that's the exception to the rule and not how we try to communicate with the council. I certainly respect and in the same way that I've voiced at times not wanting to be surprised when those surprises could be avoided. I don't think it's the way we work best with each other. We try to hold up our end of that relationship and give you as much notice as we can, while also juggling a huge number of balls and issues at all times. We certainly really try to have it sort of on our checklist before putting anything out in the public, that you get at least some notice. It certainly isn't days or weeks in many cases, but it is something that we certainly aspire to get out to you so that you're never put in the position of having to respond to something that you haven't heard anything about. We know what a difficult position that puts you in, and we try to avoid it, and we'll keep doing our best there. It is something we know is important.
Great, thank you so much, I really appreciate it, and that's not a commentary at all on the demeanor or the professionals of the people that you've had in your office. I think that Brian and now Katie and Jordan and Liz as well bring just a great sort of communication set in terms of council interactions, at least in terms of interactions that I have with both of you, with Brian, with Liz. I've just been really impressed with the way that they handle themselves and the way that the communication feels, I don't know, it just doesn't feel pressured or slimy or bad in any way, so I just really appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate that, Councilor Tracy. I'm proud of them. I think it's a great team, and we definitely aspire to have that level of communication with the council and with everyone that we're responsible for communicating with.
Thank you.
I have one just quick question. So when you get, outside of us calling, when you get someone, a resident calling, do you track that? I know this goes to how you want to spend some money, Mr. Mayor, on just communicating, but do you have a list or a tracking mechanism so that you know you got back to somebody? How does that work? That's what I just wondered.
It's not a perfect system, and it's a frustration of mine. We have tried various methods. We have spreadsheets. We have we do have a very good system now with a Click Fix that we've migrated a lot of responses over to, and some of the stuff that comes in through the mayor's office gets put into that. But it is a system we've had. We've talked to the congressional offices, and we continue to try to innovate and make that system better. And I think we have a pretty good record of not leaving things that just dropping balls and failing to kind of follow up on things. But certainly I don't think we have, especially when we hand things off to other parts of the city, knowing that the loop gets closed, we don't have a great, as good a system as I'd like someday to have. And part of this 911 or 311 system is thoughts that maybe that becomes the system.
That's what I wrote down, is 311.
Yeah.
Because, none of us have a perfect system, but I have to just let you know that I get called, I called the mayor's office, but they never got back to me. Now, you might have referred it to someone else for all I know, and I can't even give you, but this is a comment, and so I wondered what that process was like.
Okay.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Councilor Butcher. Okay, thanks a lot for that. We appreciate the additional information.
Thank you.
Understood. We're close. We'll hang in. Regional programs, health, retirement, etc. Beth is up.
Thank you. So I will start, just to let you know, we are not going to go over retirement today. As you know, we have a new actuary
Okay.
We got the first version of the report last week. We've been working with them to make some corrections and changes, so I'm not able to come to you with a good budget. It would have been guesses, and I don't want to do that, so we
Yeah.
have to
Okay.
So quickly, the first one you have is the Fund 175, which, I'm sorry, I'm lying, it's 150, which is self-insurance, which is the health and dental insurance. We are looking at a total budget of $12,650,000 this year, as I mentioned last week, I think, when we were talking about the budgets. We continue to have a good year for claims for health and dental, so we are not budgeting a huge increase. Of course, healthcare costs just go up, so what we're looking at is a claims increase of about $150,000. We've budgeted in there for next year. Our rates for all of the insurances are actually committed through this fiscal year, so we will be coming to you with that proposal, but we had negotiated rates already. Next year, we'll be going out to RFP for new rates for 20 and forward. I'm gonna go forward, and Mr. Stop me, is that okay?
That's good.
Okay. Fund 175, which is a liability insurance on the workers' comp. So the first part is the liability insurance. It's things like property, things like that. You'll see, it does look like we have some increases. We do have just cost increases on the coverage that we have. We also, what's happened here is there's a bit of a consolidation of insurance. So where BED or Airport may have been paying individually for their policies, now it's all showing up in here, so the increase is not as big as it appears just on the dollar figures. But there was an increase in the insurances, partially because of our experience, partially just because insurance goes up 3 to 5% a year. We are learning. We do work very closely with our brokers to kind of evaluate it each year and make sure we have the correct coverage but not over coverage. One thing we are contemplating going into the new year is cybersecurity coverage, which we have not traditionally have, but it's becoming more and more of a risk, and we think it's prudent to be considering now, and it's not a significant cost.
How much will that cost, maybe?
We don't have an actual quote. They've estimated at about $20,000 to $25,000. So it's not considering how bad it could be. Yeah. Then if you look at the workers' comp, you have heard me say a couple of times this year, we are not having as good of an experience with the workers' comp in 18, but I will continue to say, as we look carefully at it, it is not an increased experience in workers' comp claims. It is older claims being paid out. People have decided to have surgeries this year. So we are predicting a bit of an increase in claims, but not a significant increase because we're not feeling like it's a systemic issue here. One thing I will be raising with you, though, I'm sorry if I have mentioned this before, is what we do want to do with some of the surplus in the health this year is look at creating a reserve fund for both health and workers' comp. So we don't have to budget worst case each year. It's not great for our budget. It ends up in operating surplus. It's also, particularly with the health, where employees pay a portion, it ends up, we end up maybe overestimating what everyone needs to pay in the beginning of the year. So we'd like to create these reserve funds with not significant amounts, but $300,000 or $400,000, maybe cap it at $600,000, where we know we have a cushion. So if we have a bad year, somebody gets sick, we have a couple of injuries, we're covered. But again, so we don't always have to just assume the worst case. We don't want to use this as a crutch to not budget appropriately. It just allows us to be a little less worst case thoughtful in there.
Is that here?
No, so that will be a resolution to actually create a reserve fund separate.
I didn't see it.
Do you want me to jump to regional programs, or?
Regional programs? Sure.
Okay, so that will be the next page. Counselor, no change in the counselor fund, so pay the $5,000 each out of this year, so $1,000 for conservation funds that we have. Regional programs, we're looking at having a those that we funded in the past, which is normal RBC and NCCP slight changes in their fees. We have added as a line item the film festival, we should cover it for another year in July, we just this name out as a specific item.
I'd like to add on.
Want to add anything?
I would like to add something on this budget, yes. This is an eclectic part of our budget, this regional programs budget, right? So which we have made some changes to over the last 6 years, but quite limited. We created this emerging projects budget that I think has been helpful for us to be able to be responsive to things, and appreciate that there's been council support for that, and that continues here. We also changed the way we funded arts groups. We used to fund a number of different arts organizations out of this budget, and you may recall several years ago now, I think 3 years ago, we took those out and created and put the money into a competitive small arts grants program that BTA manages annually and has been quite well received by the public, I believe, and seems like a fair way to distribute that money. There's a number of what I would call social service line items in this budget, youth programs, domestic violence groups, several other items like that. And that's most of what the city does in terms of direct funding of social services, and that, I think, is a function of, other than the federal money that we get and pass through, we have traditionally spent, I hope longtime councilors agree, this is my kind of understanding, is we have spent very little local funds on that. That, I think, is partially, largely the function of the way the state operates, and the state is responsible for all these different social service funds, and we've also had a very generous philanthropic community that, and consistent one that has, between those two things, I think the demands on the city, it hasn't resulted in a lot of city spending up until now. I certainly feel, and I think councilors feel that my sense is that it's shifting. It shifted some with the budget last year, where for the first time we spent significant dollars on the street outreach program. For the first time, we put significant dollars into trying to expand the low barrier warming shelter, and I kind of set aside the early learning initiative stuff that is a little bit different, although one could see that as us getting involved in a social program in a new way as well. And I think the year since has only seen those pressures rise. We went through a year last year where we saw some, I think we've talked a lot about the pressures in the downtowns and the events in the downtown. And then you add to that what just happened last week with the change in United Way funding, and what it to me has crystallized a sense that I think we have to, in a formal way, I think we have two tasks. I think we have to do something to at least understand the impacts of these unexpected cuts and consider whether there's emergency funding that is right away. So this money is expected as soon as July 1st, and I'm having a meeting tomorrow with all of the local groups that will have to try to understand better exactly what the immediate impacts will be of that change. And then looking out a little farther, I think we have to ask ourselves whether this policy of the city really not being in this business is something that we want to continue or can continue, given the municipal pressures that we're facing. And so I say all that is a long way of saying this is a draft before you, and things are sort of shifting in real time here, and what we come back to you to discuss on June 4th may well be modified from here in response to what I've just laid out there.
I would just like to say, if I could go first as well, I want to commend the mayor for really trying to, this plan of work you've laid out to understand the impact on all of the nonprofits who have historically gotten United Way funding. I think that's very important to do. And to kind of have that, and I welcome this discussion about, how and where we intervene. I don't think we're going to be able to pick it all up, because I think we're talking about a very big number. But thank you for doing that work, and I understand the regional, this is a kind of work, very much a work in progress.
All right, well, I appreciate that response, and I welcome that. I do look forward to working through this together in the weeks ahead.
I think as CDBG funds changed over time, this list got added, with a little dollars here and a little dollars there.
what happened, that was one of the kind of arts-related programs that we shifted over to the, this competitive program, and they have continued to receive some funding from there, but it is less than they had been getting, and we'll take that suggestion under consideration.
And I continue to focus on a number of different populations, but the population that could be at risk and continues to be at risk are people in high school and that age, so anyways. But, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Fisher. And then with that, we will, if there's no objection, we are adjourned. I just want to let, I'm going to miss the June 4th. I'm going to be out of the country.
I see.
But then I'm back for the big night, the 18th. So if I have any, I'll email you.
Okay.
But I'm at this point, very supportive of the budget that's taking shape, and I don't. Other than I think the big issue for me is what it will do with the programs that are in trouble now, or maybe in trouble from the United Way changes.
All right, well, I appreciate hearing that. When are you departing, just in case there's a opportunity?
On Monday, the 29th. And then, if we could just stay a little bit more, I guess. So we have also the carry forward. That will be part of your plan.